conference. Brings people together to explore and share sustainable best practices that address many of the environmental, economic, and social opportunity areas facing the local communities. The Sustainable U Conference will take place on January 27th and January 28th at the Turnbull Conference Center. Register today by visiting talgov.com.
Hi, I'm Brad Johnson with the city.
I guess it's February 12th. City Commission meeting will come to order. Madam City Manager.
Will those who choose to do so please stand and join us in the invocation? God of unwavering love and life, as Valentine's Day approaches, we're reminded and grateful for a community that demonstrates brotherly love through patience and persistence for projects that seek to unify and highlight our collective greatness. May we as leaders and members of this community strive to continue to represent the spirit of love for our community first in everything we seek to accomplish. In your name we pray. Amen.
Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Manager, are there any agenda modifications?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. We have no agenda mods, and we do have two presentations on this evening's agenda.
I think we do. Is it? Yeah, the PROC is up there. Will the representatives from the National Association of Women in Construction, that is Carolyn Bibler, Barbara Bergstrom, Sandy Bucklew, and Elva Peppers, please come and join me. I mean, I said 4 people. Where's number 4? They had to, oh, they're out there constructing. They're out there constructing. Right. Yeah, and you all are taking the day off or something? Yes. Okay, all right. All right. Wait a minute, I don't have the proclamation before me. I do now. Don't mind, do you? Whereas the Tallahassee chapter number 72 of the National Association of Women in Construction, NAWIC, has distinguished itself for 52 years as the voice of women in construction in the city of Tallahassee, and whereas the work done by the Tallahassee chapter number 72 of NAWIC has benefited the city of Tallahassee through community development and educational programs, and whereas the Tallahassee chapter number 72 of NAWIC has unceasingly promoted the employment and advance of women in the construction industry. And whereas the construction community represented by this chapter has been a driving force in fostering community development through renovation and beautification projects, promotion of skilled trades secrets, and a positive vision of the future. Whereas the Tallahassee chapter of the NAWIC has sought to achieve successful results for the city of Tallahassee surrounding areas in a cooperative spirit with other organizations. Now, therefore, I, John R. Marsh III, by the power vested in me as mayor of the city of Tallahassee, do hereby recognize the Tallahassee chapter number 72 of the National Association of Women in Construction and its many dedicated volunteers for its steadfast work on behalf and support of women in construction, and do proudly proclaim the week of March 2nd through 8th, 2014 as Women in Construction Week, and encourage our citizens to congratulate the organization on its many, many, many accomplishments. You all have done well. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, how did I end up with this job?
Okay.
Barbara Bergstrom, Pool Engineering and Surveying, Vice President, Corporate Surveyor. Thank you, Mayor Marks. Thank you, City Commissioners, for your recognition of NAWIC. As immediate past President, WIC Week Chair, and this year's Regional WIC Week Chair, say that 3 times. We are honored to accept this proclamation for declaring March 2nd through the 8th as WIC Week 2014. We welcome women in construction to join our organization. Our goal is to bring fresh opportunity with leadership, networking, educational skills, and new friendships, and helping our women to achieve their goals. I'll have to give a shout out to my members, my mentors, Sandra Davis, who could not be with us tonight. She's working, our president. Our late Susan Hastings, Baycrest Corporation, Jackie Wilson, our Vice President, and our new member, Alva Peppers, and our current Secretary, Carolyn Bibler Design, and Alva Peppers is Florida Environmental and Land Services. Correct? Thank you again, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Elva says she wants. I want to thank all of you all. We're going to take this picture right quick. Come on, I like to take pictures with pretty ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you all so very much. This is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Next, we'll have a presentation of the Cultural Plan Review Committee, Capital Area Cultural Plan. Margot Parker.
And Commissioner, Mr. Mayor, before Michael starts, Commissioner Ziffer, who is our liaison to the arts, would like to introduce the item.
But before we do that, even for Commissioner Ziffer, we have to recognize today is a special day for Commissioner Ziffer. It's his birthday.
Yay.
All right. Do we want to sing happy birthday?
Yay!
We do want to sing happy birthday. Too bad. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday
To you.
Happy birthday,
dear
Ziffermeister.
Gil, what? Happy birthday to you.
Are you one? Are you two? Are you three?
More than all of that. Thank you. Thank you. Every year's a good year. This has been a process that's been going on for, well, you guys got appointed back, I think, in December of 2012. So I'd like to say it's stretched over 3 years, but that's just a total of.
That would be
it feels
stretching
like it, doesn't it? I only went to a couple of your meetings, and I think probably the thing that struck me more than anything was the depth and the breadth and the quality and the intensity of the committee to really do the job that it deserved. I know we're going to have a presentation, and I think all of us have been looking forward to that. But I want to thank you for all the time and effort. And I will say, I think probably there are quite a few of us that were pleasantly surprised with how, in the end, what started out to be, let's say, potentially confrontational between some groups turned out to be very cooperative. And I think that's what a lot of us wanted to see. So I want to thank all of you. I know there are COCA representatives here, clearly the Cultural Plan representatives. Thank you for all your hard work, and we'll address that later. But I guess we're now ready for presentation. And we'll introduce, Kelly, I'm going to let you introduce, this is Kelly Dozier, who is chair of the committee, and I'm going to let you introduce all your other folks.
Well, we're going to do that in a minute because
I
we
see.
got some things to give them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So shall we just do the presentation and,
That's what we're going to do. We're going to do that after. Why don't you give us the presentation?
There you go.
okay, all right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, for having us here and for having the foresight to create the Cultural Plan Review Committee. Clearly, it was time for a review, and we have spent the last year working very hard talking to as many people and organizations in our community to really find out what was happening in the community and what our community needed today. So we are here to present some of that. You've got the full plan in your agenda, so we're not going to read the plan for you, but we're going to just hit some highlights. And before we do that, though, I want to thank the whole committee, all the members, and there's several of them here. If they could just stand. We'll be recognized individually later, but right now, thank you very much. And in particular, I'd like to point out the subcommittee chairs who will also be presenting to you today. Betsy Couch was our Education Subcommittee Chair. Bernice Cox was the Economic Development and Marketing Chair. Jan Sheffield, the Funding and Facilities. Chucha Barber was also Funding and Facilities, and Chris Hecox was Plan Implementation. So you'll hear from each of them today as well. I want to thank you for recognizing the value of arts, culture, and heritage in our community, and for supporting it over the years and for continuing that support. Because as we know, art and culture and heritage is not just pretty pictures or nice music, it's an expression of who we are. It's what inspires ideas and innovations. It's what keeps children interested and in school. It's what brings visitors to our town. It's what motivates people to move to our area and settle to raise a family or spend their retirement years. It's the difference between the old Gain Street and the new Gain Street. It's that beautiful heritage walk on Jefferson. It's what employs thousands of people in our community, and it's what we leave behind when we're gone. It's about quality of life for the citizens of Tallahassee and those around us. It's the Tallahassee Museum, Theater Tallahassee, 7 days of opening nights, Lemoyne Center for the Visual Arts, the Riley House, Goodwood Plantation, Young Actors Theater, Tallahassee Ballet, Tallahassee Symphony, the Boys and the Girls Choirs, and too many more to mention. The arts and heritage community has suffered over the past few years due to the Great Recession. Everyone had to cut back, and some of our community's biggest efforts either failed or did not come to fruition. But today we have an amazing opportunity. It's an opportunity because we have a new, thoroughly thought out and researched cultural plan, a living document which allows our community to build on what we have, make it stronger and more sustainable, and then look to what is next in our future. Also, COCA, our community arts agency, is committed to work with the new plan and is currently searching for a new executive director. With a new plan and new leadership, COCA is poised to be the strong and uniting community arts and culture agency which we need to take our community to the next level. We ask you to accept the new Capital Area Cultural Plan and to let our community take advantage of this unique opportunity to strengthen our community's arts agency and to give it the opportunity to realize its full potential as a uniting force which provides leadership, advocacy, education, and marketing for our community as it relates to all things arts and heritage. The new cultural plan sets out the path to a stronger arts and heritage community, and we ask you to give our plan a chance to work. And now we will move on with the subcommittee presentations, and starting with Bernice Cox with Economic Development and Marketing.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for letting us be back with you today to give you our final plan. I had the opportunity to work with some extremely talented people that were on the full committee, in particular those that were on my subcommittee, our subcommittee, the Economic Development and Marketing Subcommittee. Not only were they bright and capable, but they also were willing to work and roll up their sleeves and really dig in and do some hard work. We had lots of meetings and we worked hard. I would like to recognize them specifically, please, and if they would stand. Ann McKenzie, COCA appointee. Rebecca Lutz, City of Tallahassee appointee. Bart Wells, Leadership Tallahassee appointee. Michelle Wilson, Tourist Development Council. And also Roseanne Wood, a COCA appointee. Thank you all very much. Whenever we started, we did an outreach into the community, and we met with over 100 stakeholders, either met with or talked to over 100 stakeholders to gather information and how cultural arts and heritage impacted them in the community. We also did research and looked at other cultural plans of cities like ours with the same demographics and had similarities so that we could get an idea of what some of the other cities were doing as it relates to economic development, and we used that as part of our research. The goal of the committee was to position the culture, arts, and heritage as a strategic partner in Tallahassee and Leon County as the economic efforts go forward. We find that arts, culture, and heritage has a strong impact on this community, a strong financial and economic impact on this community. It supports jobs, it supports local businesses, it supports tourists, and it also helps bring in jobs to this community. In 2008, the arts and culture organizations spent $74.6 million in this community. And I think it can be more than that, and has been more than that since the economic downturn or the economic recession. When businesses are looking to locate, one of the things they look at is what's the quality of life in that community? What kind of arts and culture and heritage do they have in that community? I know our own Economic Development Council, whenever we're recruiting businesses to come into this community where they'll be bringing jobs into the community, we're trying to show them that we have that quality of life. And those businesses are checking off a box, and they're saying, does that city have the kind of quality and commitment to the arts and culture community that our employees are going to need if we move some of our employees there and if we hire employees there? What does that look like? We want it to look competitive with other cities, and we think it will. We think it does, and we think we have a chance to enhance that. We found that there's opportunities for collaboration with COCA, with the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce, with the Economic Development Council, with the Big Bend Minority Chamber of Commerce, with the Downtown Improvement Authority, with the Tourist Development Council, and other groups. We think that arts in this community is a game changer. Arts and culture is quality of life. You're looking at a quality of life, and you're looking at an identity. Whenever we took in all this input, we ended up having over 20 recommendations. After a community forum and more input from the citizens in this great city of Tallahassee and Leon County, we were able to get it down to 12. Out of respect for your time, I'm not going to go through all 12 recommendations. I'll just say to you that in summary, those recommendations were about collaboration. They were about communication, and they were about sending a strong message that this is a vibrant arts and culture community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next.
Thank you, Bernice. Next, we'll hear from Betsy Couch with Education.
Thank you, Kelly. And thank you all for giving us the opportunity to be on this committee and go through the review process over the past year. I chaired the Education Committee along with Dr. Audra Pittman and Jill Sandler. And of course, as any of the other committees, we went out and met with a variety of different stakeholders and also researched different communities that were similar in our demographics, but looked at what were some things that worked, what were some things that did not work. And it was a very eye-opening experience for our committee. A lot of things we found, there was a lot of good. And that is, as we look to position education, one of the main things is that education is not only with schools, which is one of the first things people think of. Educating about art, culture, and heritage, that is in your everyday life. And here we are in Tallahassee, we are blessed with a variety of different artistic, cultural, heritage, unique attributes. But what we found is the community as a whole is not aware of many of those attributes, or especially the educational opportunities tied into them. What we also found is, specifically with schools, here we were in one of the worst recessions in history. And Leon County schools suffered more than $100 million in budget cuts. But we were extremely fortunate that they were able to maintain a lot of the artistic programs and cultural programs in their schools. So we're very blessed by that. But as we dug deeper, we realized that there were huge opportunities to get out of silos and have the community and different groups all work collectively together. And then there were also opportunities for additional funding sources, because even though there was a lot that had been protected, there's always the opportunity to do more. So again, we had a ton of different recommendations. We mulled it down to less than 15. A couple of those that I wanted to highlight today, which would be wonderful for our community and a lot of people have gotten on board for. They really work to collectively educate and also bring partners all together. One thing we found was, as teachers are out there, yes, there has been funding to still continue that art program or that cultural program, but that might be where it ends. And so one of our recommendations is that there is a collective place that could be promoted And that would allow the business community to come together, but also for teachers to be able to say, here's a need we have. Maybe it's that we're studying Spanish history and we want to take children to X location in Tallahassee, but we don't have the funds to pay for buses or transportation. Well, then there would be an opportunity for businesses to come on board and be sponsorships of that opportunity. Another thing we found is we have great public art and public spaces, but there's not necessarily any signage that educates about those aspects or that art in public spaces. So there are a lot of ways that we could, in a non-invasive way, create signage that further educates our community, and it might make people, as they're walking by, pause and reflect on that artist and reflect on that artistic element. Another thing we were very excited about is one thing we found is there were a lot of times you needed a conduit between the schools and also with our cultural heritage and artistic-based nonprofits to kind of provide that collaboration. And so Leon County Schools was willing and interested in creating an arts curricular coordinator. And so that position would kind of serve as that conduit between the different organizations. So the future is bright. There is a lot that we are blessed with that we already have the chance to educate about in this area. There were a lot of things COCA is already doing that we feel they should build upon and further expand. And all of those recommendations are listed out in the cultural plan. And we look forward to seeing them all implemented in the future. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Betsy. Now we'll hear from Jan Sheffield and Chucha Barber from Funding and Facilities.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, City Treasurer, City Attorney. This was, for me, the most important volunteer position that I've ever had the privilege of serving on. Certainly one of the most emotional, if you consider my professional history. And I would like to recognize the people that started to work on what was 2 independent subcommittees. One was Facilities, and one was Finance. On the Facilities Committee, it was Kelly Dozier, myself, and Karen Wendland. And Jan?
And on the funding side, it was myself and Russell Dawes from the Tallahassee Museum and Altemies Barnes from the Riley House.
Before I share with you some of the summary of the funding and facilities subcommittees which merged, I'd also like to recognize that Marion McGee is now the representative to the Cultural Review Committee on behalf of the Tourist Development Council as Michelle Wilson's term ended, and she's recently been named the new vice chair of the TDC. So. And we also want to recognize Kevin Dorr. He also served on the Funding and Finance Committee. Thank you, Kelly. One of the things that we started with was we were charged with the responsibility to look at the earlier plan, and we wanted to be as inclusive in the process as possible. So we attempted to interview as many executive directors and members of the boards of the arts organizations in our community as might be possible. And what we began with was the list of organizations that currently receive funding from COCA. As you can imagine, they are large and small, and some of them we were not able to meet with. So in those instances, we sent out surveys. We did our best to conduct phone interviews. And this is what we learned. We learned that performing arts organizations, there was and there continues to be a need for facilities in the community that don't exist. The other thing that we learned is that the City of Tallahassee and Leon County, in a very challenging time period, met the needs of local arts organizations in a way that other communities either could not or did not. So we certainly want to again thank you for your leadership in terms of supporting arts, heritage, and cultural facilities. One of the things that also became apparent is that there was no dedicated source of revenue for capital improvements. And almost without fail, every organization needed one or more capital improvement. Funding from the city that's re-granted through COCA supports general operating initiatives, and funding from Leon County that's re-granted through COCA supports tourist and attracting tourism to our community. Therefore, one of the most important recommendations that we're asking you to consider, and we understand that it requires a discussion among and approval of the interlocal agency, is we are suggesting that there be a grant program that will provide capital improvement funding for local arts organizations. Part of our report includes the research that we did on a matching grant program that formerly existed in the state of Florida Division of Cultural Affairs. So we've even given you a sample of how that grant might work. It's a dollar-to-dollar match, meaning entities that might be eligible for those funds have to bring skin to the game. The other thing that we would like to share with you is that while we were going through the process, it was rather serendipitous that Imagine Tallahassee was conducting a series of community conversations. Eventually, under the leadership of Kelly Dozier, who went to more meetings than I can even imagine, the truth is that she was able to convince the Sales Tax Committee of the importance of funding for what we now call quantum leap initiatives, whether it's a new festival, such as the one being proposed by former Commissioner Mustian, whether it's a recreation of the Shakespeare Festival, or a concept that's never before come to the city of Tallahassee. There are game-changing opportunities out there, and there needs to be a source of revenue for them. So once again, we ask we want to thank you for the opportunity to serve. We thank you for your consideration, and I'm hoping Jan will add something that I forgot to mention.
I will add, not that she forgot to mention. We did come up with 10 recommendations, 2 of those she mentioned. One of the things that was very apparent during this whole thing is that we believe that there is a lot of opportunity to work together with other entities to make this successful. At the end of the day, we believe we have given you a living, breathing document that can stand for many years to come. But the success of it will depend on the people who oversee it, and those are including our local governments. I really hope that 10 years from now, or Lord willing, I'm here 20 years from now, that I am able to see this to a fruition. Thank you very much for everything you've done to support this.
Thank you very much. Next.
Thank you, Chucha and Jan. And Chris Hecox will conclude with the plan implementation report.
Commissioners, Mayor?
Yes. Before you start, sir, what a great job with 7 days of opening nights. Fantastic job.
I was beginning
are the bags that noticeable right now, Scott?
I was beginning to wonder, were there any men involved in this project?
I'm the one. But thank you for having me today, and I will try to be brief. Our committee started out as reviewing the sixth section of the original cultural plan, which was the transition from COCA, as we know it now, from CRC to COCA. During the first 6 months, and when we came and reported to you for the initial report, after that, we met with COCA, started working on what this plan would look like, how we would implement it. So we've changed the scope, or really the name of what we are bringing forward to you as the Plan Implementation Committee. Again, excuse me, it's not very much sleep in the last couple of weeks. So the goal is really to look at exactly what COCA's role is as the local arts agency in our community. And there are 4 areas that are of importance to our community. The first one being grant making, advocacy for arts, heritage, and culture, marketing arts, heritage, and culture in our community and beyond, as well as education. So with that, and my colleagues have mentioned this as well, we looked at the plan originally. In the first 3 years of the plan, there was what was called an audit committee, which would report back to the commissions about the plan and what was working, what wasn't working. That was sunsetted after 3 years, and the plan really lived on a shelf. And that's why we, as committee members, really talk about this being a living plan. So to do that, the recommendation from our committee is that the plan is reviewed annually, and whatever shape, or form, but it really needs to be looked at, it needs to be reviewed. Good things need to be applauded, things that need to be worked on need to be changed, and so forth. So from an advocacy standpoint, COCA really needs to take the forefront as the advocate for arts, heritage, and culture in our community. With that being said, the board has a major role in that, but the new executive director is really the person at the top, and that person will work with all of the different agencies, the Chamber of Commerce, and so forth, to make sure that arts, heritage, and culture are at the forefront of everyone's mind here in the community. We also recommended, I believe it was in 2008, COCA put forth an economic study of the arts in the community, working with the American for the Arts organization in Washington, D.C. It's our recommendation that this occurs every 3 years. We really should look at what impact financially the arts, heritage, and cultural community has. Let me go back to this being a living plan. The committee is recommending that there be an advisory committee made up of members of the cultural plan, COCA, and other community leaders to review this plan annually. We are recommending that it is taken on by our committee and sunsetted after 2 years and being on the board, part of the board of COCA moving forward. We also understand that there may be budgetary issues regarding this plan, need for funds in different areas. So with the acceptance of the culture plan, we believe that the COCA board, members of this committee and other community leaders should come together, look at the plan, look at how it needs to be implemented, and report back to the commissions as what those needs are. Thank you again, and we appreciate all the time that you guys have put forward as well with the cultural plan. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So you've heard all the subcommittee reports, and thank you for your time and attention with that. As you know, this committee was a city and county joint committee. And we did present to the county commission yesterday. And the county accepted the report, and they made one modification. Our recommendation to have the ongoing advisory committee, they did not accept that recommendation, and instead they changed that to ask COCA to create a committee underneath the COCA board that would serve that purpose. So that was the only difference that we understood from what they had decided yesterday. And our committee is okay with that decision. And we're also obviously would be happy to go forward with the recommendation that we made to have a separate committee. But whatever you all decide, we would be happy either way. So thank you very much for listening to our report.
Thank you, but before you leave, explain that last one to me again, so I'll make sure that I have an understanding of what was recommended by the county.
Okay, so in our recommendations, we thought that particularly with a new plan and the transitions that are going on in COCA right now, that it'd be best to have an ongoing committee and we call it an advisory committee, to oversee the plan in a way that just meets twice a year with the COCA board to discuss how the plan is going. And then if there are any problems with the plan, that committee would go back to you or the county commission and discuss any changes that might need to happen.
But that's good, but how is it the makeup that's different from what you're suggesting?
The difference is, rather than being an independent committee like our committee was, working under the two commissions, what the county commission suggested is it be, I guess it would be like an ad hoc committee of COCA. So it would be under COCA, not under the city and county commissions.
And your suggestion, would it be made up of the current members, some of the current members?
Some of the current members, and then we actually named several other representatives in the community to come in. I think some of our committee members are ready to move on to other things. Some are interested in continuing. So it would bring in more people from the community, even including the universities, FSU, FAMU, TCC, into that mix, so that the whole community can kind of move forward together on cultural and arts.
Who would make the selection to the county commissions group?
If this were an independent committee continuing, I would think it would be the city and the county.
No, the county commission has made a recommendation for a group. Who would make the appointments to that group?
The way I understand it would be the COCA board, because it would be a committee under the COCA board.
Okay, and the one that you're suggesting, the appointments would be made through the city and county commission?
Yes.
I see. Okay, just want to make sure I understood.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Lots.
I want to thank you all, first of all. I asked a question, but first of all, let me make sure that I thank all of you all for what a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful job. I haven't read the plan completely, but I have scanned through it. It is a great document. And it sets out what we need for this community. And, you know, I often don't hear the term living, breathing document, except for the Constitution of the United States. So, and I'm glad to hear that means it changes no matter, you know, there can be revisions and that kind of thing to it. And so I like that. I think that's very, very appropriate. And since it's online, you can really make it live and breathe as we go along. But I look forward to working with you all and implementing that plan. You got great folks working with you, and I know a lot of them. I see a lot of them in the audience, and they do just a wonderful job, and I'm glad I appointed some of them. Okay, good. Anybody else? Whoever. You want to go down the line?
I'll go last if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Commissioner?
Just thank you. I don't think people realize how much time it takes for this, and this has been all-encompassing, all-consuming. Thank you very much for your time. It seemed like yesterday we did the cultural plan for the first time, and it was a mess before there was a cultural plan in a COCA. It was an absolute mess. So you're doing great things. Thank you for the time that you took away from your businesses and your families and your organizations to do this. You certainly made Tallahassee proud.
Commissioner? Either one.
Well, I had so many comments, I just don't know where to start, but the very first place to start is obviously to thank all of you for what you've done. We have had an unprecedented level of citizen involvement on various issues over the past year. It has been an amazing thing to watch, and all of you are taking, if you charged us for your hours, I'm sure that it would be a great big bill. Yeah, I know all of you are busy people, you're accomplished folks, and the fact that you are willing to come forward and spend this kind of time, this quality effort, I just really want to express my deep appreciation for what you've done for this community. So that's one place to start. And that leads me into, I've also spoken with Roseanne. We had lunch last week, and we talked about your issue about the oversight committee. I don't look at that as an oversight committee, as you called it, an advisory committee. And one of the best things about our Blueprint experience has been the Citizen Advisory Committee and how it has informed the Blueprint process. I see the potential for you all to be that same ability, to be a mirror, to be an informing, sort of almost an objective observer, not so much, not supervisory in any way, but just to sit back and be able to watch and then check in periodically and say, well, what about this and what about that? So for that reason, I really would like to see you all continue to do that. The least of, one of the most important parts about leaving you all in place is that you're doubling our effort. You're doubling the number of people who are out there advocating for the arts education, strategic planning, looking at this as economic development, and the ways, because I firmly believe that we should be seen regionally as a place where people can go for wonderful experiences with history, with culture. I mean, we have so much here that not even our residents know about. So I'm very excited about the education piece of it, the fact that you've brought to everyone's attention that the residents don't know, aren't aware of the richness that we have here. That's going to be very important to go forward with. The fact that you've brought up the importance for capital, a place where people can go, where our existing organizations can go and find money to put in a new sound system, new seats, new whatever they happen to expand their facility, that sort of thing. That money hasn't been there before, and that's going to, we are going to be responsible for making sure that that is established. That was a wonderful suggestion. I think that as we go forward, I would like to see COCA be able, and I don't know how you make this change, but I'd like to see COCA be able to fundraise in order to enhance their marketing efforts to provide this advocacy for the arts agencies that I think is sorely needed. Right now, they're operating and doing a fabulous job on very little money. We cannot expect to get to the next level without investment. I'm really happy to hear that we have part of the sales tax under Imagine Tallahassee is dedicated to doing just that. I come from a town that is built on culture and arts, Asheville, North Carolina, which was this little sleepy town, and now we all go up to Asheville to enjoy their heritage. We should have people coming down here, and that is going to take money, and it's going to take putting in place folks that are able to be that advocate for your organization. So I'd like to somehow, as we pursue the next steps, be able to reach that. And then I'm going to quit in just a minute, I promise. What was the other thing I wanted to say?
No, keep going.
Well, the fundraising, I wanted to provide the Downtown Improvement Authority as an example. And you all, with COCA, with more money, and now you have the opportunity to hire a new executive director, that person needs to be skilled in business and needs to know how to sell this community and others on our arts heritage and the richness that's here. So when you're choosing your person, please look for someone who can be a game changer the way that the new executive director was with the DIA, because now and he's probably here. I'd be surprised if he hadn't used everywhere else. But so just that one thing, I wanted to bring that up, and I will yield the floor. Thank you.
Commissioner Gillum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll add my voice of deep and sincere appreciation to the committee. Really talented individuals who gave really selflessly of their time on a range of committees to yield this report. And like the mayor, I look forward to going through it more deeply and also seeing it transition to the existing Culture and Arts Committee for continued implementation. I also think it's important to recognize that without the platform of arts and heritage and culture in this community, we'd have nothing to evaluate. I mean, we've got a very rich sense of arts, heritage, and culture in this community. Just, look even, amongst you all. I'm thinking of you, Erica, who is already an accomplished artist, and Amanda, through your work, and Dr. Price Pittman, who is a doctor and studied in this area, to Chris Hecox and 7 Days of Opening Nights, to Emmy Award-winning Chucha Barber. Just in this room, there's such an amazing collection of talent in this space. So I have no doubt that, building off this report, we're going to end up better and stronger, and I think more united. And the community, the larger community, will be the benefactor of it. Clearly, people are increasingly choosing places where they want to live, both senior citizens, but also millennials, based on the art, heritage, and cultural offerings of a community. And so this is so intricately tied to our economic development, our quality of life. It is the heart and soul of a community, but it's also the economic development future of a community. So the importance of this cannot be overstated or over underscored. And just a reaction to one of the recommendations, which I thought sounded very innovative, and one that is sorely needed, as your report points out, and that is with regard to capital improvement funding. The truth is that because the resources going into this area are so limited on the scale of resources, if you will, they almost all have to go out the door and into directly the organizations who are providing the direct service. And in that process, you lose a lot. Buildings suffer. Some of the critical planning and capital planning needs end up being neglected. So I fully embrace that. Obviously, the challenge will be trying to carve out that piece of the pie to make sure that those funds go there. And then this didn't necessarily come back by form of a recommendation, but would throw it out, I think, for the COCA board's consideration, and that is the issue of multi-year funding. And I'm not sure if you all have wrestled with that before, but these agencies oftentimes are not as staffed up to be in a grant-making cycle constantly, and that's what these things often find themselves as, are these perpetual grant cycles. And so these folks are balancing between the delivery of service and the managing of their entities and organizations with developing a proposal and updating proposals and going out to apply for money. And it doesn't work in all places. We're considering it obviously now in the human services, but I think it's something worth looking into. It may or may not work for these in the arts and cultural way, the same way it works for social services, but the impact on agencies is still the same. They spend a lot of time, a lot of energy in the proposal writing and evaluation process versus the time that can be spent on the delivery of services. So I would hope that we'll, be innovative in our thinking toward that. And with that, I want to thank Commissioner Ziffer for his energy in initiating, along with, I believe, County Commission Chair Dozier, some of the questions. But you all are extraordinary, and if we do our jobs by investing in this, all of us win from it.
This commission, let me just say this right, this commission, it's a good thing because you've got 5 advocates, 5 strong advocates for the arts. And I don't know if that has always been the case. And I see some people shaking their heads, no, it has not always been the case. But now you have a commission who is committed to doing what we can for the arts. And so I want to thank my fellow commissioners for their commitment to this. And I want to take a special opportunity to thank Commissioner Ziffer, as indicated by Commissioner Gillum, for his advocacy and being our liaison to the arts. Now, that doesn't mean that the rest of us aren't as passionate as he is, because we are, but he really, truly has a passion for this, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you. Commissioner Ziffer wants the last word. Let's let him have it.
Well, a couple of comments, but the first thing, it's a question. Commissioner Miller, how proud are you? I mean, my children have never come before this commission. And, I was sitting here watching Betsy, and I was just thinking, if that were one of my children, I would probably be as proud as you are. So I'm not sure if people realize this, but one of our speakers
I am very proud of my daughter.
You didn't see her smiling from ear to ear?
She did. Okay, I'm going to try to bring it in for landing in a second. The first thing I want to say is COCA is a standalone, and as far as I'm concerned, and I think this commission, and I think the community spoke very loudly over the last 24 hours, will always be a standalone. And we have to make a commitment as a commission, as a community, continue to fund what COCA does, and based upon what this cultural plan has come up with, we'll be doing in the future. So for those of you that are part of COCA that are here, thank you for doing what you've done in the last 24 hours, rallying the forces, because it was important. And I think you have demonstrated, all of us, you are a force to be heard. So thank you. If I might suggest, I'm going to make a motion that we accept the plan. But what I'd like to do, and we've had these internal discussions, I'm the COCA board member, and that is, we don't know how much it's going to cost to implement. And so if we could, Madam City Manager, perhaps you and I, we could work with some representatives from the county and with COCA and with the cultural plan and talk about, okay, what's the cost going to be, so that when we get our budget cycle in June, we'll be prepared to talk about that, if that's okay. So my motion will be to accept the plan, recognizing that at this point, we're not saying we can do everything because we don't know if we can afford it, but that we're going to work out and find out what the cost is and do everything we can so we come up with those dollars.
Second.
Sounds like a motion. All in favor of that motion to accept the plan, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
There's no opposition, so we're not going to worry about that. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now,
Oh, we're going to go get some awards.
come on down. We got some special things to do. They've even
We all get to go?
got a script for this, so I'm going to follow it.
I don't know.
The City of Tallahassee Commission and Leon County Commission created the 18-member Cultural Plan Review Committee in October 2012. The Cultural Plan Review Committee was charged with the responsibility to review the original 2003 Cultural Plan, assess the status of the plan and its implementation, determine what portion of the plan might need to be updated or omitted based on changes that occurred since its creation. The committee sought to engage citizens in the planning process and bring an independent perspective to the examination of the existing cultural plan, current programs and the existing cultural plan and current programs and future initiatives. The committee held its first meeting on December 10, 2012. Since December, the committee and its subcommittees have held over 100 publicly noticed meetings. And I want to emphasize that. That's a lot of meetings. A lot. And everybody over there saying, yeah, that's a lot of me. Who attended all of them? Okay. Kelly Dozier.
City staff did.
City staff did. All right. Let's clap for the. Well, and in addition, it is estimated, I think this number is wrong, quite frankly. It is estimated that they have donated an average of 300 hours individually. That's a lot. I mean, what's your hourly rate, Kelly? All right. Individually to conduct interviews, research, and preparation of the written interim and final reports. Because of their commitment and contributions to the development of a new capital area cultural plan, the Tallahassee City Commission wants to recognize the following members of the Cultural Plan Review Committee. Please come forward as I call your name. And the first name, of course, is our chair. Our chair, Kelly Dozier, please come forward. Stay with us. Next is the vice chair of the Cultural Plan Review Committee. I think my appointee, I hope. I think she is Dr. Audra Pittman. Dr. Pittman, please. Chucha Barber, Chair of Facilities, the Facilities Committee. Chucha. A definite stalwart in this committee for the arts. Chucha, thank you so much. Betsy, a member of whose mother sits right up there and is proud, smiling. That's the couch. Thank you so much. Okay, and are you my appointee, Bernice? Oh, Bernice Cox. Bernice is a very good friend of ours. Christopher Hecox, Chair, Planning Implementation Subcommittee. You will not get a hug. I was mistaken. Well, you won't get a kiss. Jan Sheffield, Chair, Funding Subcommittee. Jan, this is the money person. Rebecca Lutz. Rebecca, please come forward. She was on Economic Development and Marketing Subcommittee. So much, Rebecca. We really appreciate you. Stand right here. And an individual I've known for probably too many years, a long, don't look at me that way, Ann. You know, it's been a long time. When she was in the legislature, I used to lobby over there, and she was just really great at what she was doing. She was from Fort Lauderdale, but she made a wise decision to relocate to Tallahassee from Fort Lauderdale. Ann McKenzie. Come on, Ann. Bart Wells, Economic Development and Marketing Subcommittee. Bart. Another male.
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Okay. Roseanne Wood, Economic Development and Marketing Subcommittee. Roseanne. Thank you so much. Okay. Karen Winland Dix.
Who knew?
You didn't think we were going to call you?
These guys get all over the credit. I was just on the kickoff team.
That's all right.
Just for 6 months.
We like it.
I'm honored to be included, thank you.
Jill Sandler, Education Subcommittee. Okay, she's not present. You want to accept? No, that's okay. Well, we'll accepting on her behalf. All right, Maida Williams. Maida's not here either.
We have more than they're not here.
Okay, Maida Williams is not here. Altamise Barnes, but there's a representative for Altamise. Come forward, please. And that is Marion McGee. Marion McGee on behalf of Altamise Barnes. You look lovely. Okay. Well, is Russell here? Russell Dawes.
Russell and Kevin are not here.
Okay, Russell Dawes was on the Funding and Facilities Subcommittee, as well as Kevin Dorr. Kevin is not here as well. He was on the Funding and Facilities Subcommittee as well. But we also want to recognize the contributions of Mark Bauer, former chair of the Marketing Subcommittee from December 2012 to June 2013. And Mark, unfortunately, he made a slight mistake. He's no longer residing in Tallahassee. But we'll recognize him anyway. Maybe he'll do some similar things wherever he is, okay? On behalf of the City Commission and the citizens of Tallahassee, we want to thank you again. Thank you so very much.
I can say one more thing, and it was an oversight on my part.
Go ahead. Hang on, Ben.
Just I want to make a quick comment, oversight on my part, because I think they belong to be in the picture as well, quite frankly, and that is our city staff that was at every single one. So,
Come on, Wanda.
Michael, where are you, Michael? I'm all right. I'm good.
Get in there, Gil.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. And if the other commissioners want to...
No, you're good, you're good.
Can you get us all? All right, let's love each other. Squeeze in. Love each other. Love each other. Squeeze in.
I just can't get too behind. Mr. Mayor? It's okay. One more thing.
Spay and neuter. What is that?
All right, look at the camera. We can't see the camera. The camera can't see you.
One, two, three. One more.
Okay, so make sure you got film in it.
You done all right? Good luck tonight.
I will thank you.
Bye-bye, Chris.
It's not public.
Don't tell him.
All right, we're on the next part of the agenda, but I understand, and that's the agenda with presentations or,
No, we're on citizen input.
but before we go to citizens input, Commissioner Maddox, do you have something you'd like to?
Yes, sir. Just under announcements, under advice of counsel of the city attorney, I previously declared a conflict in item 13.05. And the city attorney is handling the paperwork on that, and so I will not be present during the discussion and vote on that item.
All right. With that, we're on the next item.
We have a number of speakers, Mayor. Each of the speakers we have is on item 13.05, approval of fourth extension of purchase option agreement with McKibben Hotel Group. The first speaker scheduled is John McKibben. He will be followed by Gary Yordan. As he approaches the microphone, I'll let speakers know you have 3 minutes for your remarks, and there usually is a light to your left. I'm hoping it's on the table and
it's not.
It's not on the rail where it usually is. That'll be green. It'll turn yellow, then red when your time expires.
Put it up on the ledge. Yeah, that's good.
And if you give your name and address for the record, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John McKibben, and I live in Tampa, Florida. And I'm here to talk to you about a great economic development project that we have planned for Tallahassee. Just to remind you a little history, we've been here for 20 years. We built 3 hotels here, and we are an urban specialist. We do a lot of downtown properties, including Asheville, North Carolina downtown. Great project there. We usually build 2 or 3 hotels a year. We submitted to an RFP for the property on Monroe in Tennessee many years ago. And at that time, there were no other bidders interested in that property. So we went forward for a hotel and office. We built the Aloft Hotel, created a lot of jobs and a lot of taxes. We built that on Parcel A. We worked very diligently to get an office building done. Henry Martin, who I've been working with for all this time, we worked with all the major law firms and anyone who had any interest in office. We even got all the way to the point of a floor plan site development for one of the firms, never got a single one to buy it on it, and this was pre-recession. We finally determined there absolutely is just, unfortunately, no demand for an office space in that location. We spent quite a bit of money working on that. So we came up with a new plan, but the new plan needed a deck. And the deck not only for the new property, but for our loft. We will have to have space for our loft parking because that'll be taken over there. And this new deck is going to cost over $5 million. We worked with the CRA, just couldn't make it work. They can't build a deck. Our deal was dead. I finally came in against the advice of our chief financial officer, and I said, I'll do the deck myself personally. This deck has a minimal return, maybe 2.5%. Why on earth would I do it? Because I want to get that project, I want to get that site developed and get this thing going. So with the deck settled, our goal is our project is worked out, the money park is worked out, it's just simply a matter of timing. Now we received a second extension which gives us an option on this property through April of 2015. we will meet that deadline. All we're here today is to move the dates for the performance standards. And the only reason we even need to do that is because something that happened here that was completely beyond our control. So a little more time for the performance standards, and we're ready to go. So in summary, I just want to say there's no reason to start over. That'll take years. Let us move forward. We've got a great hotel. Our loft had the best year they've ever had since they've been here. Let us build a project that's going to create new jobs and new taxes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, the next speaker is Gary Jordan. He'll be followed by Wes Townsend.
Gary Jordan, representing McKibben Hotel Group. I know this has been a moving target, Commissioners, and it's been a difficult one for you folks. There's two things that I'd like to add tonight that I'm pretty certain about with all the other moving parts. One of them is we found out through this process that nothing's going on that corner without a parking garage. We know that now to be true. Nobody's vision, nobody's special project, nobody's anything is happening on that corner without a parking garage. And we also know that the CRA can't pay for it on their own. Those are things we've just learned in this process. The other is kind of a personal certainty. I spent 12 years sitting in a seat very similar to yours, making pretty difficult decisions for this community. And I found out that when there is a critical project like this, and the garage represents a critical need community project that we can't pay for, and a private developer with a great track record in our community comes up and says, I'll take the risk, I'll build it for you. And a group of citizens that you appointed, called the DRC, whose sole responsibility is to look at those type of issues and make recommendations to you on their feasibility, looked at that offer by this developer and voted unanimously yesterday morning to say that you should indeed give this project more time. And I know that if I was sitting in those seats, I would say that ought to be something I listen to. The citizens I appointed, bankers, realtors, professional people in our community that have a better handle on this than my commission ever had. They understand these issues. They looked at the proposal and they said, this should get more time. There's nothing barking at the door. You may, at the end of the day, decide to go out to another RFP. But for now, without anybody banging on that back door, I would urge you to listen to the people who have looked at this proposal, this valuable community asset, and said, Commissioners, unanimously give it more time. Thank you.
Next is Wes Townsend, followed by Henry Martin.
Well, look like it's going to be Henry Martin, followed by Wes Townsend. That's not Wes Townsend.
Thank y'all. We have been talking about this project for a number of years.
Name and address, Henry.
I'm sorry.
We all know you, but for the record.
Henry Martin, 5027 Centennial Oak Circle, Tallahassee. Yes, and Mayor, I want to first of all say when we started this project, the mayor was so heavily involved in it, and he actually said what kind of hotel he wanted there, and we were real pleased that Mr. McKibben was able to bring that hotel. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about market conditions. Several years ago, probably about 2 years ago, I had a building listed on North Monroe Street. It's what I call the old Florida Theater building. And I was working very hard to lease or sell that building, and I thought I'd make great inroads because I discovered that the federal government had agencies all over Tallahassee, and this building is the only thing in the block that's not controlled by the federal court system. So I, in my brilliance, tried to get GSA to come down and do something with this building, and finally they came, and they came with this group of people who were going to evaluate it. And I had everything laid out, and the first group that said something said, where are the parking spaces? I said, well, there are 5 in the basement. And they said, we're gone. We're sorry. All of our federal agencies have to have the ability to respond rapidly. They cannot walk 2 or 3 blocks, 4 blocks to get to their car. That building is still vacant. And that's an example of what happens when you don't have adequate parking close by for office space in town. The other thing I want to say is, as we pursued an office building in this location, what we heard repeatedly is, how far is it from the Capitol? Now, I want to say that to us who walk Monroe Street, it's no distance to the Capitol. But unfortunately, if you're a lobbyist or someone who needs to get up there rapidly, this building is out of the range for law firms and associations and people who want to be near the Capitol. There are other places that are sitting vacant that are closer to the Capitol. So this hotel will always be a destination spot for people who are going to the Capitol, for associations, for professional people, for travelers, for our football fans. But an office building for people linked to the Capitol, it is not a feasible process. It's just not going to happen. I also want to say that I've known John McKibben and his company for 20 years. We do go back that long. They've always done exactly what they said they were going to do. They've been honorable. They have invested in our community. They believe in our community. The opportunity to get this building, which we've gotten so far along now, sort of like we're 9/10 up the mountain.
Excuse me, your time's expired.
Thank you. Is one that I hope we will not pass up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wes Townsend or Nancy Lenan, maybe?
Good evening. Nancy Lenan with Carlton Fields. I speak in favor of the extension that's going to come up at 13.5. Just thought I'd give you an idea of this extension is also structured in the same way that you structured the last one. The very first extension was because the economy tanked. The second one, there was nobody else out there. The second one actually extended the option until April 2015, but you guys were real smart and said, but we want performance activities in between, and those ended January 19. The only reason we came back last fall to get an extension, and you only extended it until the 28th of this month, from January 19th to 2/28, not a long extension, was because of the litigation, which was filed on the last day one could file litigation and dropped the day before we were going to go to hearing. That was not my client's fault. So we extended it until 2/28. Now there's a game changer. The CRA has got lots of needs, lots of wants out there. And so they said, can you build it? We've got other things we need to do with our money. And surprisingly, to me anyway, we always said the hotel needs a parking garage, but we were totally surprised when the developer said, yes, I will build it. Little risk to the city, a much better deal to the city. So where we would go from now, were you to consider this extension, would be back to the Citizens Committee. They met on an information-only basis last night. You then go back, and I think we have a date for that. It would be early March. They would make a formal recommendation at that time to the CRA. The CRA would meet in late March. We would be back in front of you the last meeting in April. I don't know whether that's the 23rd or the 30th. And remember, last time I had asked for, said we need 90 days, if you approve it, from when you approve it to when we could submit the formal construction plans, because you have to basically coordinate the building of the hotel with the parking garage. So this is thought out. We're not asking for extra time we don't need. Thank you very much.
Can I have a question answered?
Go right ahead, Commissioner.
Nancy, you said that the litigation began on a certain date and ended on a certain date. And basically the entire project, McKibben project, was on hold during that period of time, correct?
And it had been proceeding within the schedule up until that time.
And how long was that period of time?
You would ask me that.
I'm thinking it was about 90 days, so I remember
All right.
counting that.
Got 90 days. All right, and you're saying that the performance measure was due on January 19th?
Correct.
And so you've expended it one day so far, well, I mean, 1
So you
month
took it
so
from the
far.
19th
Okay.
to the 28th.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Westtown? Okay. Very good.
I had a question, and I'm not
Wait a
sure.
minute. Any more? Wait a minute.
We do have two other speakers.
Two other speakers.
It's a question maybe to one of the speakers, I'm not
Okay,
sure.
go right ahead.
Since Mr. Weston isn't speaking. This information came to us, and I just want to confirm that it is the case. The parking structure that is being said that you would build personally, is there a requirement that we would remit the TIF for the remaining life of the CRA in order to accomplish that? Someone want to address that?
Maybe,
Yes, I am West Townsend this time. But yes, that is part of the proposal that we made to the CRA over the last few weeks, is that we would construct the garage, 281 spaces, and we would lease the lot that we lease today. Essentially, it would be a ground lease on the current terms that we have today, which last up to 60 years. It's a 60-year ground lease that's in place today. We would close on the property for the price we've agreed upon with the city for the corner parcel. We've provided a pro forma to the Downtown Redevelopment Commission, which lays out in detail all the financial aspects of the proposal. And part of that proposal is that the TIF money that is generated from the Aloft, the Hampton Inn and Suites hotel that we've proposed, and the parking deck, which would be private in that case, would be returned to the developer. And it is essential that that be done as part of the proposal because of the financial aspects and the pro forma that we're looking at.
So just to make sure I get it, the TIF that will be generated off of all new added value that this construction would bring would go back to you, but you would also receive back the TIF that we've been collecting up to this point on the Aloft Hotel? Not what's been collected, but for future, we would no longer collect that for the CRA, it would go to you.
That is correct. All the property that's part of the Floridan project, which is that entire block, would go back to the developer in order to fund the parking deck that we're proposing.
The parking deck, my numbers are confused. How many spaces in the parking deck you're proposing?
281 is what.
And how many do you need for the two hotels?
Well, giving various times of the day, I suppose, we look at a maximum usage of, say, 240, I believe, which was in the PUD submittal, which has been through the Planning Commission stage thus far. But that's peak demand primarily overnight.
But that would only conceivably leave 41 spaces for general use.
Overnight. Potentially during peak times.
Right.
There would be many spaces available during the day. In fact, our pro forma includes right now 90 spaces for monthly parkers during the day, and also hourly parkers also. Obviously, it's in our best interest to open up the deck to as many users as possible, 24/7, 7 days a week.
But this is a substantially smaller deck than was originally envisioned.
Originally, in the original PUD submittal, when there was an office component in the corner, it was over 600 spaces, I believe, because of the big demand that is required for office users.
Right, but that would have filled a much larger demand we might have downtown for critical parking, whereas now, not so much.
Well, there's 281 spaces in the deck, and during the day, our demand is actually quite low. So there would be quite a number of spaces available for the general public during the day.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Next speaker is Erwin Jackson, followed by Curtis Baines.
Dr. Erwin Jackson, 1341 Jackson Bluff. Unlike the folks you've just heard from, I'm not making any money out of this deal. McKibben Hotel Group project is the most recent example of blatant dishonesty, unethical conduct, manipulation of this commission for the sole purpose of providing financial benefit to Scott Maddox, Governance Incorporated, and his business partners, Gary Jordan, and others. When will this commission have the courage to stand up for the public and demand ethical actions from its members? Scott Maddox has used his lobbying firm Governance to facilitate this sale to the McKibben Hotel Group, which began back in May of 2006. Since becoming a city commissioner, he has tried to hide his role from the public. First, City Attorney Shelley suggested Scott should not vote on these issues. Unfortunately, Shelley suggested it'd be a neat trick if Scott would simply get up and leave, as he has done for numerous months, leave the dais before any vote. This legal advice would allow Scott to not vote, but also prevent him from disclosing his conflict of interest in writing. I've received a ruling from the Florida Ethics Commission, which I'll make part of the public record. It's been in place since 1988, and it clearly states, I quote, "An official who temporarily absents himself from the portion of a meeting at which he would be presented with a voting conflict of interest still is required to announce the basis of the conflict and file a memorandum of voting conflict, which he has refused to do." City Attorney Shelley also provided cover for Gary Jordan when it was pointed out by the Tallahassee reports that Gary was not a registered lobbyist with the city. The cover-up continued when Mr. Shelley allowed Gary to register as a lobbyist for a defunct, unregistered business once called Zachary Group. This week we learned that when the city manager wants to send an email to Gary, she doesn't send it to Zachary. No. She knows where he's at. She sends it to Governance Incorporated. Scott Maddox, Gary Jordan, Paige Carter Smith, and Governance are all involved in an organized effort to extract money from the citizens of Tallahassee. Unfortunately, their actions are being supported in part by the city manager and definitely city attorney. It is time to tell Scott Maddox that these self-serving actions stop tonight. Vote down this project. No more delays. I'm also asking this commission to request a formal opinion from the Florida Ethics Commission whether Scott's actions to stand up and remove himself from these votes, in fact, is a violation of Section 112. The public needs to learn the truth. Thank you very much, and I'll make this part of the public record.
Next speaker is Curtis Baines.
Mr. Mayor, just briefly before you go on to the next speaker, although we all know that this stuff isn't true, I always try to dispel it because someone might be unsuspectingly watching TV. Of course, what Mr. Jackson says is not true, and everyone in this room knows it, and everyone that follows closely. He's accused me of everything from having my cousin being the fire chief, who I wasn't related to running a criminal empire, to somehow stealing $300 million. And so far, my wife wants to know where the $300 million is. It hasn't surfaced, but I just want to, for the record, say that absolutely what Mr. Jackson is saying is not true, but then again, it's not a surprise to any of us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Baines.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Curtis Baines, 1323 East Tennessee Street. I don't have any objections to extending the milestones. You've got a contract with this developer until, or they've got an option until April of 2015. I understand the need that to set reasonable goals and time frames for people to get the work done. And I appreciate the need for developers to use due diligence in an undertaking of this nature. But rhetorically, I don't expect an answer this evening, but, since your last extension, option extension, you granted, I believe, a 9-month extension of the time frames, and now and tonight will be a 3-month extension. So in the last 2 years, in this 2-year extension period, we would have extended it, or extended milestones for a year. So at the end of the option period, are we going to be in a situation where we're going to have to be requested to extend it another 2 years in order for them to complete the work? This property, as everyone knows, was optioned in 2006. And this may be the best game in town at this point. I don't know, but it's been nearly a decade, and I'm reminded of an effort up at the Civic Center it seemed like we went on for 20 years with trying to get a hotel out there. And as far as I know, that's still ongoing, and we still don't have a hotel out there. So I don't know, at what point do we simply say, look, we need to take a look at what our options are at this time? And I know we've got until April of 2015, before this current option period expires. So if we give them every opportunity to complete the work that they need to, but at some point we need to say, well, we need to start taking a look around and seeing if there are any better games in town. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's the last speaker on the item.
All right, next item on the agenda.
And the next item, Mr. Mayor, is consent, but before we go to consent, there are two items related to aviation, and I don't think you all have officially met your new aviation director. I know some of you have individually, but he is here today. He is Thomas Chris Curry. Will you stand, Chris?
Thomas Cliff, welcome.
And we want to welcome you to Tallahassee. Do you have any very brief words for us? Come forward.
In other words, you do have some very brief words.
Over here.
And they are very brief.
Come over here, sir.
It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Well, good evening. Just a few brief words that I'm, of course, very excited to be in the city of Tallahassee and working for you to advance the regional airport. And I know you have big plans for it, and we're excited to execute it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Very brief words. Very good.
Yes.
We look forward to talking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're on consent, Mr.
I'll move
Mayor.
consent.
Second.
Properly moved and second. All in favor of the motion to move consent, say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Next item.
The next item is 11.01, which is request to waive fees and initiate a PUD amendment for the Westgate Mission Planned Unit Development. And Commissioner Ziffer has agreed to put this on the agenda and introduce the item.
Commissioners and Mr. Mayor, this is an extension of many of the changes that have occurred in our homeless community over the past 12 months or so. When we had a need, an immediate need for existing beds, it so happened that the Westgate project out on West Tharp Street, we were able to set up 2 modular units prior to the completion of some permanent buildings. Rick Carney and the Westgate project since that time have opened 2 buildings, and our agreement was the modular units would be removed by a certain date, which has come and gone. We've extended a few times. We're at a point now where we can't continue to extend them as we have, but the need still exists. There are plans for a total of 13 buildings. There's been a commitment that the buildings will be completed within 2 years, and what I'm asking for at this point is for us to file an amendment to the PUD and also waive the fees so that we can get this done. Rick Carney and Westgate, they've agreed to remove the buildings regardless after 2 years, whether the 13 are done or not. But right now, those buildings are being used, they're being occupied, and quite frankly, we don't have them there. We're going to have some homeless folks out on the street, and I don't think any of us want that. So with that, I will move the item.
Second.
I got one question. Is it 13 buildings or building 13?
13 buildings.
It's a total of 13 permanent buildings.
Okay, I see building 13 on here in the recommended action. I guess that's...
Yeah, it does say that.
That's the wording.
That's worded?
wording,
Okay,
yes.
just want to make sure. And we need to correct that. We got a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Next item.
The next 3 items are introductions of ordinance, and the city attorney will handle those.
Thank you, Madam Manager. The first item is item number 1201. It's the introduction of ordinance number 14-0-11. The title of that ordinance is an ordinance repealing section 12.61 and amending section 13-34B5 of the Code of General Ordinances, City of Tallahassee, relating to firearms. The first and only public hearing will be held on Wednesday, February 26th of this year. I'd like to move introduction of that ordinance.
It's introduced.
Item number 1202 is introduction of ordinance 14-0-12, repealing section 2-92 relating to preference in purchasing and contracting for local charitable contributions. The title of the ordinance is an ordinance repealing section 2-92 of the Code of General Ordinances of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, relating to preference in purchasing and contracting for local charitable contributions. Again, the first and only public hearing on this ordinance will be on February 26.
It's introduced. When this comes back, could we get some statistics on how this has worked or has not worked, or what's happening with it, since we're going to have a public hearing?
Certainly, Mayor, we'll make sure that the purchasing division puts together a report.
Okay, next. It's introduced.
The final ordinance for introduction is item number 12-03. It's introduction of ordinance number 14-0-13, authorizing towing of vehicles from certain reserved parking spaces. Again, the official title of the ordinance is an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending the Tallahassee Code of General Ordinances, Chapter 20, Article 5, pertaining to trespass towing of vehicles, authorizing trespass towing from certain public right-of-ways, providing for conflict and severability. The first and only public hearing on this ordinance, it will also be on February 26, so we can move introduction of it.
It is introduced. Next item.
The next item is item 13.01, authorization to terminate the construction contract for the Gain Street North Bicycle Boulevard. And Commissioners, you will recall that this past November, you awarded a contract to construct the Gain Street North Bicycle Boulevard project to Talcon Group LLC. You may also recall that the city has, particularly in the Gain Street Madison corridor, been facing some challenges in providing ample stormwater conveyance capacity to the Lake Alberta Regional Stormwater Facility. The Gain Street North Bicycle Boulevard presents a unique opportunity to begin accommodating additional stormwater conveyance capacity in support of additional public and private development in the area. This item requests Commission authority to terminate the current contract and redesign the Bicycle Boulevard improvements to convey more stormwater through the corridor, and to authorize staff to pursue discussions with area property owners to advance their projects in a manner that's compatible with the city's vision for development along Gain Street in Madison. To summarize it, as we are growing and we have started to create a vision in that area, we find that some of the things that we talked about doing, we don't necessarily want to do in the same order, because we don't want to come back and have to redo some of those things. So as we have more interest in the area that is developing, we need to take a look at when and how we do these kinds of things. So what we're asking you for is your authority to have us take a look at redesign of that area and re-award of that contract.
Okay. Is that draining into Lake Alberta? Is that what that is?
Yes.
That goes to Lake
It'll
Alberta?
add capacity.
It would be, yeah. I see it at bottom left-hand corner. Okay. Just want to get my bearings. Commissioner?
So is this change being necessitated by a question of sequence, timing of when you want to do it, or is it that someone else is working in this area and we benefit by dovetailing the work that they're already doing? It just seems weird that in less than, 3 months between having voted on this and considered this, you all are in a completely different place. It doesn't seem fair to the vendor. And I read the write-up, and it seems to make sense that you want to get the sequencing right. But for us to have gone through a competitive bid process, awarded this contract, and then basically said to this vendor, forget about that. We got a new plan. We're going to try something different. Something about that doesn't seem right, and I'm wondering if you all have considered keeping the vendor but delaying the work. Explain to us how we got here, please.
The scope of work will change, so it won't be just a matter of keeping the vendor.
Does this vendor have first right of refusal on the new scope of work? Or?
No. That would not be the proposal, but we do understand that there are some costs associated with the vendors having submitted the application, and he will be reimbursed for those costs.
That's the $5,000 to apply, I guess, that they put into.
There are different costs associated. He has staffed up for a few things administratively and so on.
Is that what the $5,000 is for?
That's part.
An item?
That's part of it.
Okay, so what's the rest? Where does the rest show up?
When the vendor is awarded the contract, he starts staffing up, doing some administrative work and so on in order to do that. The item today is basically to help us terminate the contract or allow us to terminate the contracts in accordance with the conditions of the contract. What that would imply or involve is we terminate the contract and we compensate or negotiate the compensation for the vendor for whatever he's expended to date with regards to that. That's one option. We have never issued the vendor a notice to proceed, which is usually the next step on a contract like this. All we have done to date is award the contract. We have suggested and indicated to him that a notice to proceed was coming, but in the time over the holidays, during that time period, this corridor, let me go to this next slide.
Is it abnormal that once a contract has been awarded, that a person or a company wouldn't begin making preparation for that? I mean,
No, he did, and we're willing to, in terminating the contract, we're willing to sit down and discuss that. Obviously, there are some charges that would qualify for reimbursement, others wouldn't, so we would sit down and work with that.
So what does the $5,000 represent?
The 5,000 is just a general ballpark of what something like that would typically involve in administrative costs, staffing up for administrative costs, and so on. The vendor has already communicated to us some other costs that he suggests that should be considered for reimbursement. We are basically working with them and talking to them about that, and obviously it's going to be based on the vote tonight as to how we proceed with this. But everything is done in accordance with the conditions and the requirements of the contract. We're not looking for anything outside of the ordinary that's not covered by the contract. What had happened in this case here with the next, this is the basin, just to show you that I put up here is the basin. What you see in red is the proposed new conveyance line that we're talking about to connect to Alberta Crate. But this is the large Madison Street drainage basin. This is a close-up of the area. What you see bordered in blue there is primarily the contract that the vendor would be making the improvements on. That contract was to create the bike boulevard in this alley and to add some stormwater piping in there. At the time that this was designed, the stormwater piping there was primarily for the bike boulevard and in support of the bike boulevard. Since that time, it's been identified as an ideal route by that grader, that conveyance system that I showed you in the previous slide. It's an ideal route for that, which would require a major upsize to that pipe that was being planned in here. That's going to require some planning and some additional design in order to accomplish that. Our preliminary estimate is that it could add up to 65% to the bid cost of this project at the time in order to construct that pipe. That's a 65% increase. That's a significant scope change to the contract document. Therefore, our recommendation is in accordance with the conditions or the provisions of the contract to terminate the contract. Let us design this, because the delay is going to be over a year, well over a year, due to other development that's going on in the area and the anticipated demand for use of that property future in support of the other development. If I may continue with this, to hopefully bring everything together. What you see there, the haunted house property, that was closed and sold, and the property was closed in December, after the contract was awarded. That developer has already come in and met with the city. It's Mr. Alan Hooper. He's come in and already met with the city through the pre-application process, and we're rapidly moving forward to try and get that developed, and I'll show you some pictures as to what's being proposed there. Just north of that area where you see the west parking garage, that's the second phase. That's part of the second phase for the College Town improvements in the area. Also, moving forward and needing to be built. That's a multi-story parking garage. The haunted house redevelopment are multi-story developments. There's going to be a need for some staging for those folks to be able to stage and construct that. If you look at the perimeter streets around that site, this is an ideal location to allow them to do that. Because any place else is likely to block the street or encompass the street. So that added to the request as well. As far as the development, that's the haunted house, what it looks like today, and this is what's being proposed on that site, and that's what came in through the pre-app application. The forefront, the building on the forefront there is primarily a high-end or higher-end condominium type project. And then the building in the back that you see on the far back end of that would be a boutique hotel for the site. And then this alignment here is basically the stormwater pipe where we're coming through. And what you see there, that would be the upgraded pipe. It cuts through both the west end of Mr. Hooper's property, down the alley, and also across Gain Street. The next item on the agenda is to allow us to proceed with the Gain Street award, and then also add a change order to that, to add that section of pipe across Gain Street, so that we so that we do not have to come back later and tear up Gain Street or the Gain Street improvements. The timing of that is critical because Gain Street this intersection has a very limited window in which we can build it, which is basically over the summer months, because building it will require closure of the intersection.
You got more?
Mayor, yeah. I get that, and by the way, the rendering looks great. I'm not sure who in the room is responsible for that, but, and I don't have a problem with that, and again, that all makes sense. I do have a question about the reimbursement for the costs that have been expended. If I was counting on a $500,000 job that just kind of went away, and I'd made preparations for it, I'd expect, in the very least, to at least be compensated for what I've expended in preparation for that. You have in this item 5,000, but you indicated in your comments that that may or may not be what this settles on. So do you plan to bring something back that's more complete?
Well, what we asked in the agenda item was to authorize the manager to make that, to settle, have that negotiation and settle on that. But we can certainly bring it back if that's a preference.
I mean, it's in here, so I assume you needed authorization.
Authorization to terminate.
To terminate and to pay $5,000 in settlement.
The $5,000, Commissioner, is basic. It's like an application amount that we assume when someone presents to us a major project application, that it takes about that much at least of work and administrative costs for them to submit, and they submit it in good faith. So at a minimum, we know that we owe them that much. We may need to negotiate additional amounts depending on what they have geared up to do.
All right. If we could just bring back what gets settled upon.
Okay. We certainly can. May I ask where you see that in the agenda? The 5,000?
It's somewhere. I'll show you after the meeting.
Okay.
Commissioner Miller.
Well, you know, over the last couple of months, I'd say probably the last 6 or 8 months, I've expressed growing frustration in the fact that our planning staff, and in this case our public works staff, is not communication in what I would consider to be adequate communication with our stormwater department. And this vendor got caught in the meat grinder of that lack of communication. Here he's planning on going to work tomorrow, basically, got an executed contract, did his bid, everything. And then because we failed to coordinate, he has lost his job. So he's the one that suffers here. Improved communication in every time there's a square foot of dirt to be turned anywhere in the vicinity of this area, where everyone should be aware that we've had discussions on inadequate conveyances, because I've had conversations with you, I know, on a number of occasions. Every time, okay, so we all now know, so let's announce it to the public and all the staff. We know that there are conveyance issues. So every time you plan to dig anywhere, you need to coordinate with stormwater and see if there's an opportunity to upgrade the conveyance, upgrade the sewer and the water or whatever else needs to be done so that we are not having to go back in there and dig this whole thing up again and do it over when we get phase 3 online or whatever. And never again are we putting a contractor in this position. I mean, I think this is very, very sad. I don't like to see this happen to our folks. And so please, please, in the future, better coordination from planning, from growth management, from public works, with stormwater and wastewater, with our utilities.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question again, separate, but for you, what's the state of our milling and paving contract? The current state of the milling and paving contract for the city, is it, are we currently in a arrangement or?
Yes, we are.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
So, John, you were not aware at all of the project? I just need to clear that up.
No, when we became aware of the Bicycle Boulevard, we approached Public Works and said, listen, if you're putting a pipe in here, why don't you put a larger pipe in here? When we met on that, we learned that in the interim period, the developer that Gabe has talked about wanted to use the right-of-way for future development, well, for his staging area.
Mm-hmm.
So it really wasn't a delay for the project to upsize that pipe.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it all transpired.
Okay. So it wasn't like a total lack of communication, it was a matter of timing as well? Yes or no? I just need to really know the
I
answer.
think that's what the agenda item said.
Ultimately, the project, is my understanding, had to be delayed because of the developer, and it gave us the opportunity to upsize this pipe.
Okay, that's
We
what I
were not
thought.
aware
That's what I
of
thought.
the project when it was bid.
Okay.
And so.
All right.
No, now that.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve? There's no motion to approve. The staff recommendation, or is it authorization to terminate the construction contract?
Sure. I'll make that motion because if you don't terminate it, then you're just incurring damages.
Exactly.
We're obviously not going to go forward with it. I mean, I don't think anybody likes where we are from any angle, and we want to make sure that everybody's fairly compensated, but what we can't do is nothing. So I move the item.
Second.
Properly moved in second. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
Could I add one last comment? If there is any, oh, did we vote?
Yeah, we did.
Yes, okay,
I did
good.
call for
So
a
we're square
vote.
for that.
Huh?
We're finished with that business? I just, before we drop it.
Did you vote in favor? I didn't hear.
Yes.
Okay, it passes 4-1. Go ahead.
Is there any way to, and I don't know who the one that voted against it, it wasn't me. Okay, good, thank you. Is there any way that this vendor can be brought in with a few extra points going into the next bidding process? I don't know, I just have this is really troubling to me.
I have a point of information that might ease some of your anxiety on this. We have another approximately $2 million project that's been stalled due to some land transactions that have been going on. And just last Friday, I think we had a breakthrough on that, and I anticipate this contractor, and he's got an award of a contract for $2 million that's been stalled, and I think that project's going to break free in the next 2 weeks, and he'll be going right to work on a $2 million project.
That is helpful.
Yeah, that is helpful to know. And again, my vote was not, I think moving the project is fine, but I'm just thinking if I was the guy who owned the business, I think this whole situation is pretty unacceptable.
Okay. Next item.
13.02, and Commissioners, this item is requesting award of the Gain Street roundabout construction to Allen's Excavation as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Due to the summertime construction limitation of this project and the need for stormwater conveyance improvements as discussed in the previous items, we're requesting authorization to negotiate a change order to this contract to add a stormwater pipe, as mentioned earlier, under Gain Street.
Any questions? Can we see that project up again? The circle? Okay. So now, back to where we were, the pipe is going to be put in before you do the circle, or?
Within the limits of the Gain Street right-of-way, the pipe will be put in so that it's there ready for as we do the extensions to those pipes, up both north and to the south.
And the circle is going to come in after the pipe?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When do you anticipate completing the circle?
We anticipate having this done by August.
Wow, that's good.
Yes.
I like it. Of course, I've been an advocate of circles for a long time, and this one fits perfectly. Now, when are we going to get the gains in Lake Bradford?
That's part of the sales tax.
That's a big one. That's what I was afraid you were going to say. Okay, we need to do that one quickly. That is, no more comments. Okay, thank you very much.
An interesting comment, though, as part of the traffic control setup for this intersection, because like I said, for this construction, we will have to close the intersection as a detour route. We are reintroducing, and this is going to be it's going to make a big change to the traffic patterns in the area, but we are reintroducing the north-south movement across the Gain Street and Lake Bradford area. So you will be able to continue north onto Stadium to get to St. Augustine and to Pensacola off of Lake Bradford.
That's good.
And similarly, southbound as well.
That's good.
Is that temporary?
Sir?
Will that be temporary until we eventually build the roundabout?
It is temporary, and we'll see how it works.
That's good. Now, at one point, Gabe, if I remember correctly, we were going to extend Woodward Avenue further south.
That was very early on with the Jackson Bluff and that whole development. We can't get across the railroad track. It's going to be very difficult to do that.
Okay, I just wanted to know what happened to that. Okay. Do we have a motion?
Move the item.
Second.
Properly moved and second. All in favor of the item, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item.
Next item is 13.03, request for approval of Animal Services Center interlocal agreement with Leon County, and also ratification of actions to address the repair and maintenance of the HVAC system at the Animal Services Center. And Commissioners, as I indicated in the title, we're looking to seek your approval for the interlocal agreement, which Raul Lavin will discuss with you very briefly, and also to ratify a decision to move forward related to the HVAC circumstances in the Animal Services Center that you are very aware of, and that you formally and previously directed that we give immediate attention to correcting.
Sure.
We've been able to do that. We came up with a good solution to do so, and the county is supporting us and paying for half of the cost. So, Raul, if there are just some high points that you want to talk about that focus on the interlocal agreement.
Thank you, Madam Manager, Mayor, and Commissioners. We've been renegotiating the interlocal agreement with the Animal Services Center with the county over the last 2-3 months, and what you have in front of you is a much better agreement than what we used to have. It's streamlined how the costs are allocated out between the city and the county, both on operating and capital costs. On operating, what we did is we looked at historical data to determine where the animals were coming from, city or county, and have determined that a 45-55% ratio, city picking up 55, the county picking up 45, is a good ratio to have as a allocation methodology for operating costs for the next 5 years. The interlocal calls for renewals every 5 years. We'll review that formula, and if those numbers change, we'll make those changes before it's renewed. On the capital costs, I think we came out very well, and the interlocal agreement calls for a 50-50 split on all capital costs at the animal shelter. As you know, that's a 17-year-old facility. We have some HVAC issues that the county has agreed to apply that 50-50% split on those costs, but going forward, the county has guaranteed us that they'll participate equally on any capital improvements at the animal shelter. The other thing is looking at standardized operating procedures, and the county has agreed to follow those, so everyone's working under the same rules at the animal shelter. So those are the three main points of the agreement, and the county will be taking this to their commission at their next meeting on February 25th, I believe.
Didn't they pass this last night?
They passed the HVAC improvements last night, but the interlocal agreement's going at their next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll move the item.
Second.
Properly moved and second.
And I want to just make a quick comment. I want to thank the city manager and the county administrator for moving as rapidly as you could and working with the vendor. I think we probably have an extremely good outcome now. I wish some of our animal rights activists were here to hear more about this. I'm sure they'll read about it in the paper tomorrow, but well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. It was something I was concerned about, and that is the difference between how we address animals inside and outside the city limits. And I assume that that's going to be an issue, Raul, that you're going to take up with the county, because I for the life of me, I don't see why we have different rules in terms of those, animals inside and outside the city limits.
Yeah, the city and the county are still looking at ways to streamline operations at the Animal Services Center. One of the things that we're looking is how we dispatch animal control. We're going to be looking at potentially utilizing the Joint Dispatch Agency as a method of dispatching animal control. That would free up some staffing at the animal shelter right now. The other thing, like the mayor indicated, and there's actually a work group looking at this right now, we currently have ordinances in the city and the county related to animal control, looking to see how we can move to have one countywide ordinance on animal control, dealing with a whole bunch of issues. So we anticipate bringing that back to both commissions sometime this year.
Okay. You got a question on this?
Well, I just want to know, it's a congratulations. I really appreciate what you're doing, because I think that this is really cleaning up a lot of issues that we have related to the shelter. The fact that you are making this progress, I think, is stepping up right at a time when it's very, very important for us to get our animal shelter to be one of the best facilities that we can make it. And so I appreciate all the hard work that you are putting in. I want to join Commissioner Ziffer in thanking the city manager for a phenomenal response to the conditions of the HVAC system. I know that you are more frustrated than anyone, because you've had to deal with this problem forever, and I think you have come up with a wonderful solution. I really appreciate our county colleagues jumping on board to help, and so thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And the animals, thank you very much, too. All those
Our
dogs
employees.
and cats and everything.
And our employees.
Yeah, and employees.
Yes, the
Employees as
employees.
well. All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Next item.
The next item is 13.04 Pensacola Street and Martin Luther King Boulevard water and sewer improvements. And Commissioners, the purpose of this agenda item is to really provide you with information regarding an upcoming water and sewer improvement project in the Pensacola Street, Martin Luther King Boulevard vicinity. And typically, this would be a consent-type item, but we thought this was important enough to bring it to you, because there will probably be a lot of questions and inquiries, and we wanted the public to see this project and understand it as well. John Buss is going to introduce the project.
Good evening. This project starts out as a water project. It's part of improvements to help improve water service in the downtown area, where our system is quite old. Pipes are deteriorating, valves need to be replaced. It's part of work that was approved in the city's water master plan. But any time that we are out working in a street, we look at the other utilities in the street, again, to avoid digging up roads twice. And we identified sewers in the area that would also need replaced. So this is part of a longer-term program to upgrade water in the entire downtown area. Previous to this, we've done work on Franklin Boulevard. A few months ago, we did a water main all the way down Tennessee Street. We did that. But this work had the potential to cause some disruption with temporary lane closures. And so we need to go out on these types of projects and make contact with customers who live along the construction area. Before we did that, we wanted to make sure you were aware of those contacts and the need for the project. On the monitor, I have the areas that we're talking about, and it's primarily Pensacola Street between Duval and out to
Wanish Way.
Wanish, I guess. I'm never sure where those names change. But
Macomb.
And the That's going to be water and sewer work, and it will require some lane closures, and of course, that's a busy street. So we're working with our communications office to not only talk to stakeholders, but as well as the traveling public, make sure people are aware of this and why it's necessary that we do it. We anticipate bidding this work later this month and getting construction started as quickly as possible thereafter and finishing by the end of the year. And we will be working closely with the Civic Center and the FSU's facilities on any service disruptions. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, but that's the summary.
The only question I have is, we're going to convey water down both of these areas. Where is it going to? I mean,
No, this is drinking water.
This is drinking, okay.
Right. This is sanitary sewer and drinking water improvements, not
Okay.
stormwater.
All right. Are we going to redo the roads, especially Martin Luther King Boulevard? I mean, are those roads going to be repaved and reconstructed or look a little different than they are right now?
Curb to curb resurfaced, yeah.
Curb to curb, okay, okay. All right,
Just a
that's
quick
just for information purposes.
Okay. Just a quick question on, is it your department that's doing the Old Bainbridge
Yes.
work as well? The potholes are really exposed, and someone sent me an email saying that one of their tires got blown out. And I'm sorry, you saw it as well?
I got it too, yeah.
I'm just wondering, is that going to be leveled at some point? What's the stage?
Was that a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think it's already been repaired, but the practice in paving these asphalt roads is they leave the manholes down low, and then they have to go back and raise them up after the fact. And that work's been going on for a couple of weeks, and so there have been some traffic disruptions as well as rough surface out there, but I believe all that work's finished now, is that correct?
Well, I mean, we're still working on it.
They're still working on it.
Okay.
She's supposed to be done this week.
So what's the timeline for this week? Okay.
2 weeks, 1 week.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
You sure can.
By the way, those improvements were similarly, the county planned to repave that road. So we negotiated and got them to actually delay half a year to a year so we could get in there and replace the utilities and again avoid ever having to dig up a new street.
That was really, that informs my question to a degree. I was wondering if we have a policy where we try to always upgrade a road where we're going to be doing work. For example, you've got, I believe, a 10-year plan or something to replace all of these water and sewer lines. And so when we have such a plan, is that coordinated with our street repaving plan in any way?
Yes, we try to do that. We sponsor a meeting in our department, and I believe it's once a month or once a quarter? Once a quarter, where we ask everybody to come in and put their projects on a common map and talk to one another about what they're doing to address that very thing.
On a long-range term, like 5 years out, 3 years out?
It's probably not that far out.
But several.
More immediate than that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
John, let me ask you just one question, and you may not. The construction that's going from Monroe Street to Meridian on Bradford, is that ours? That's been closed down?
That's Public Works. I believe it's a ditching closure.
Is it,
sidewalk.
what is it? I didn't know it was a water project or what.
No, I believe that it's maybe sidewalks, but there were ditches, so they therefore had to build storm sewers and put sidewalks on top of it, I believe.
Okay, that's fine.
Public Works.
Just curious.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item.
The next item is 13.05, approval of fourth extension of purchase option agreement with McKibben Hotel Group. And Commissioners, you're very familiar with this, and you've already had a lot of discussion, but just quickly, in April of 2013, the City Commission approved a second amendment to the purchase option agreement with McKibben Hotel Group for the purchase of the city-owned property adjacent to the current Aloft Hotel. Included in that extension were a series of performance milestones which the developer had to meet in order to keep the option agreement active. In November of 2013, the City Commission approved a third amendment to the option agreement, which extended the deadline for 2 of the agreement milestones to February 28th of 2014. The amended milestones require that the developer enter into an agreement with the CRA for the development of a parking garage and submit their building permit for the hotel and parking garage by the February 28th parking deadline. The CRA is slated to consider their development agreement request for the parking garage on February 27th. The developer has requested a fourth amendment to the option agreement, which would extend the deadline for the completion of the two agreement milestones to July 31st, 2014. This is a lot of discussion and change, but I think you are very familiar with the project and you're familiar with the actions that have taken place up to this point. Michael, is there anything we need to add to this discussion at this time?
No, I could answer questions if you.
Can you put into context
Commissioner?
the parking piece?
Yes. We've been negotiating, there had a team of negotiation on the city side from the CRA, from legal, from the treasurer, clerks, and real estate have been working with the developer for several months now. On the original concept is that the CRA would build the parking structure, borrow the funds to do it. After numerous meetings, we really had come to the conclusion that there was no way that we could recommend that the CRA take on that risk as far as the borrowing, and suggested to the developer to look at the possibility of them developing and come back with a proposal for them to build the parking structure, which they have. And that was presented to us approximately 2 weeks ago, and the pro forma was developed and delivered earlier this week. Essentially, what that proposal calls for is for McKibben to construct the parking garage, approximately 281 parking spaces. We would amend our current land lease, the CRA's land lease that they have on what we call Parcel C, which is where the parking structure would be constructed. The CRA would continue to collect the lease payments it is currently collecting on that site. And then the developer would, in fact, build and construct the parking structure. Now, there are several elements that have come in as the pro forma that I believe the CRA staff still see as problematic. One is that the financing formula for that does require that the CRA remit back to the developer all of the TIF that is generated from all the improvements, which would include the new hotel, the parking structure, as well as the existing Aloft Hotel. The other element that is problematic is in the pro forma that was submitted to most recently. The construction costs do not appear to include the build-out of retail space on the bottom of the parking structure. Now, that is not a CRA requirement. However, it is our understanding that the Land Development Code and the PUD amendment, as is currently has been approved by the Planning Commission, includes that requirement that you have space on the ground floor that's built out for interactive uses or for retail. In the preliminary discussions that we had when we were modeling that, we have attributed a cost of almost as much as $1 million to that cost when you build in the cost of building the structures, and also the fact that would require the parking structure to be sprinkled and it would have to be waterproofed. That cost is not represented in the current pro forma that's been submitted. So while it is financially viable, assuming that the TIF is provided, that cost out there's still a question as if that cost element is not in there. And in fact, it is a requirement from the Land Development Code and in the PUD that it be built, that whether and how that a building permit could be drawn for that without that improvement or without that build out of the retail on the ground floor. Did I address your questions?
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
I was looking at the map. You might want to put the map up so we can all share the view. I was trying to figure out, when you're talking about the retail space, exactly where that retail space would open up. And is the parking garage going to No. Would that retail space front on Tennessee and on Call?
It would front on Adams, is my understanding.
Isn't there something between the parking garage and, oh no, I guess there's not. But it's high. There's an elevation change.
As you know, there's different levels on the site, and this is the current land development code for the multimodal area. As part of it does require that for parking structures on the ground floor that you have interactive uses, which retail or some other interactive use, and that's what is in, as I understand it, is in the PUD amendment, which is what you're referring to, that shaded area on the parking structure, on the plans for the parking garage. And the question is that if that is in fact a requirement of the, and is it in the PUD, can the parking structure actually be built without those improvements? And if it has to be built with those improvements, then those costs need to be included in the total cost of the parking structure.
And we're going to thoroughly discuss this at all of the numbers and whatever, if this passes, if all of the numbers and the progress and whatever the options are, we'll discuss that as the primary focus of the topic of the discussion at the CRA meeting?
Yes, there's two things, if I could. There's two elements in the performance measure, or the performance milestones that need to be addressed. One is that under the current terms, they have to meet by the 28th of February. One is a development agreement with the CRA on the parking structure, and the second is the submittal of the building permit for the improvements. If the CRA were to approve the funding recommendation, it is still extremely unlikely and quite frankly not possible that the second would be met without giving them an extension, because the developer has maintained to you in previous meetings that they really cannot engage to have building plans built until the amendment to the PUD is dealt with and approved.
Let me, any more questions?
Thank you.
I want to, you Michaels, hang on. I want to know what if you can, the process or the procedure that we have in place at this point until July. I mean, where do we go? What are the steps next based on any commitments we've made to them, based on what the CRA has to do, and based on what the city has to do?
Well, the process for them, based on what they've outlined for their request, would mean that between now and the end of July, the CRA would have considered and approved their development agreement for the parking structure. The PUD would have been reviewed and approved by this body, and then they would engage a company to develop their building plans, and then submit that application to the building department by that date.
Can you put this all in a timeline?
Well, I believe the sequencing is the CRA is considered the first sequence. If the CRA is not going to participate in the financing, which is the first milestone, then it becomes, then proceeding with the amendment to the PUD really accomplishes nothing. In fact, it puts in place a development scheme which cannot proceed. So I think the feeling has always been that the CRA would be the first step in the process, that the CRA would either approve or disapprove the financing terms for the parking structure.
All right, go ahead, continue.
And then if they did, then you would progress to the second step, which would be they have to come as a public hearing back to this body to consider the amendment to the PUD.
Okay, so what are we doing today?
Well, because the agreement is going to expire on the 28th of February. We were bringing this to you now to your attention, and the developer has requested, we brought their attention. If you desire to extend this, you should take this action now rather than the 26th when there is no time. Or if not, then you should indicate that there's not going to be, you're not interested in extending. There was extensive discussion on this matter at their last meeting in November. If you're not interested in extending, then identify that you're not going to grant an amendment. That means that if the terms aren't met by the 28th, then they haven't met the milestones. But I will tell you that, and if it is your intent, if they do meet the milestones, to pursue another option for the property, you do need to provide us direction with that if they have not met the milestones by that time, it's the intent of the commission that we would terminate the purchase agreement. It doesn't automatically happen. It's simply it is the right inures to the city to be able to terminate if they don't meet the performance standards.
What I'm concerned about is whether or not we as a commission made a commitment to them to have this matter considered by the CRA.
No, sir. I think what your commitment is that you gave them an extension to the 28th. That was done in November with the intention that it would have an opportunity to get to the CRA by the 28th, which still is it is still scheduled for the 27th. The Downtown Redevelopment Commission had their meeting yesterday, which was part of the review process. They supported the project, so that process has been passed. And so it will be going to the redevelopment agency on the 27th, which will be within that 28th threshold.
Okay. Is there any harm in going, when's the next CRA meeting after this February CRA?
I'd have to ask.
I think it's March something. March 27th. What is the harm in allowing them this option or the ability to go to the March 27th 7th CRA meeting? Or is there?
I don't know that there's a harm. We're just looking for the city commission to give us direction as to whether, there was a lot of discussion at your last meeting about whether you wanted to provide further extensions. So that's why the staff is asking for direction. We didn't make a specific recommendation.
Were you at the DRC meeting?
I was not.
It was anybody? Roxanne?
Imagine they were.
Give us some
Sir,
information.
I was there.
All right, what happened? Please.
It was a little bit of an unusual meeting in that we had 2 brand-new members, and several of our more experienced members were not there. But we did discuss the project very briefly. We had gotten the detailed pro forma the afternoon before and had a little bit of time to review it. We didn't have time to actually confirm the numbers. But the committee took a very quick look at the proposal and decided that they would reach a consensus or recommend that you consider extending the option. They didn't actually rule on whether or not they support the project or not. They just recommended that the option be considered for extension, or the milestones.
Okay, help us out, me out a little bit.
Sure.
What is the responsibility of the DRC in this process?
The DRC is charged with reviewing projects through looking at the financial implications of any commitment that the CRA might make. So, for example, if we're proposing to help finance a project, they look at the detailed pro forma, they look at our projections, they look at the confirmed numbers to determine if we've covered all of the issues. Frequently, they have additional questions of the applicant. They look at development fees, they look at the soft cost, and determine whether or not the project, in their opinion, is feasible, and then they'll make a recommendation to the CRA on whether or not they should fund or not fund, and to what extent you might do that.
All right, did they consider the TIF issue where the McKibben Group is asking for all of the TIF for this property? Did they consider that?
They knew that the McKibben Group was asking for all of the TIF, but we hadn't had time to work out the projected total cost to the CRA or anything like that. We did let them know that we had done a counter proposal with the applicant and suggested splitting the TIF. We did get to tell them that we have not, on other projects, committed the entire TIF of the project for the life of the CRA. That is unusual for us. And should we go back to the DRC, then we'll have that discussion again in greater detail.
Well, would we go back to the DRC? What circumstance would we go back to the DRC?
If you extend the milestones tonight, then we would take the project back to the DRC with a detailed analysis of the proposal and hopefully a staff recommendation.
And that would include looking at this TIF issue, because it is, in my opinion, it is a very serious issue when we decide that we're going to, if we should decide, we're going to forego all of the TIF.
You're right. That is a very serious issue for the CRA, and yes, it would absolutely include an analysis of that. But I can tell you, we have looked at that issue. We know what the projected amounts are, and we have an idea now of what the impact would be to the CRA to commit all of the TIF from the Aloft Hotel, the Hampton Inn and Suites, and the parking garage for the life of the CRA, which is 19 years.
But are you telling me, though, that the DRC has not really considered that? Are you telling me that?
They didn't have time to actually look at, nor did we have time to prepare all the numbers for them.
And they ought to make a recommendation to the CRA with regards to the financing.
They will if we go back to them. Right now, the only recommendation they're making, and it's an informal one, is they wanted us to let the City Commission know that they would recommend that you extend the milestones. They haven't ruled on the project. They haven't done their detailed analysis. They just
Well, it seems to me,
let you know.
It seems to me, I just got to say this, we need to let the DRC do their job.
And we can do that if you extend the milestones.
I mean, the as you're saying, the DRC has to should make a recommendation with regards to the financing related to the CRA. But you're telling us.
That's what they do.
And you're telling us also that they have not really looked at a significant part of this financing, which is the TIF issue at this point in time. Is that what you're saying?
They haven't had time to consider all the numbers.
But to me, it sounds like this is, at this point, this is kind of a decision that's at our place. So I don't know if there's a motion, but.
Go ahead, Commissioner Ziffer.
Back in November, I wasn't here in '07 when this was originally '06, but I have been involved with a couple of votes on the extension. And this was originally a 90,000 square foot commercial structure of which almost 14,000 square feet was going to be retail. Now it's a 120-bed hotel. It was going to have over 600 parking places. Now it's got 281. There's a real financial implication here when it comes to the CRA and the TIF money that we're going to lose. I can't support it. Yeah. I can't go any further on this. I was like this in November, and we said, oh, okay. And then we did it again, and I'm done. So I'm letting everybody know in this commission, I can't support an extension. And at this point, if there was an option, I'd just go ahead and vote to end this. I'm not sure if that's possible. I don't know if there's support, but I'm done. And I appreciate everything that they've done, and I've had a conversation with some folks about this. And I don't disagree that this probably may eventually be a hotel site. But if it is a hotel site, I still think we can do better than 120 beds, parking facility that clearly does not meet any real needs that we might have in that area. And so why would we do this? And so I want to not only not extend it, I want to end it. Commissioner?
Yeah, I was here in 2006, and I do remember the very impressive renderings and, frankly, the big, broader vision that was put forward at the time. And having heard from Mr. McKibben, I think he probably believed very strongly in that vision and that it would be attained. And through a myriad of circumstances and situations, we are kind of where we are right now. And that's very different than where we were in 2006 when we evaluated this project in totality. It wasn't just about a hotel here or a parking garage here. It was really, it felt more master plan than anything. It was the hotel with the rendering of the Floridan office building, which was sort of an homage to the building that was there historically. And then there was the parking facility, which we were going to participate in, and that it would also be an extension of our vision for the CK Steel being a super stop. And maybe the ability for folks to park their vehicles, ride the bus, in our downtown, or throughout our city, frankly, through what we might facilitate in this area. And today it's very different. It feels, in my opinion, it feels a little bit small and not grand. And we don't get a whole bunch of options to decide what our gateways look like. I wouldn't have guessed that we would have had what's going on catty corner to this site, but that is happening. I frankly would be in favor of us putting this site out and trying to see what interest is there. And frankly, I realize that means taking a risk that nothing might be there for a period of time. And I actually think that's okay, considering that I think our downtown, Gain Street, Midtown, what we're doing in Cascades Park, that is opening March 14th, is a signal of a renaissance that we're experiencing. And so I think we got the capacity to be elastic about our plans for this part of our community, for this corridor. And the truth is that once whatever we decide today probably has a 20+ year life to it, if we make the decision to allow something to be built on it. The other part is this this idea of giving away the TIF, which is exactly what these CRAs are intended for. The only way we bring revenue into the CRA is based off of the new values that's created from what's redeveloped into it. And if we cut off the lifeline of that funding, that limits our ability for redistribution and to fund other projects coming into the area. And so The financing around that, in addition to the other points that I've made, make this a really, really unfortunate situation to sort of arrive at. But, if we do make the decision to put an RFQ or an RFP out on this site and solicit big, broad visions for what this could be, maybe more in line with what we had intended in 2006, who knows what we might get back with regard to potential projects. We may get this one back, but we may get others. And we may get nothing. And we got to be okay with, if we get nothing for the short term, that in the future growth and development of this community, that something will come along that will be worthy of this important gateway site into our city.
Commissioner.
Well, just listening to all of you talk, I wasn't here in 2006, and it can't help but wonder, there are a lot of drawings that were done in 2006 that are probably sitting and gathering dust on a lot of shelves all across the country and especially all across the state. But I can pretty much guarantee you that there are a lot of drawings that are sitting around on shelves that have been altered in that period of time. And I hope that maybe someday that market that has collapsed will come back. I'm not sure whether that will be in my lifetime or not. So basically, that's just listening to you all talk about this. The bottom line for me is that the delay was caused by, and I said this in November, the delay was caused by circumstances outside of the developer's control. And at the very least, we should give him the amount of time that he was delayed in the milestone. And so that's I wanted to know from Roxanne how long it would take if we did and analyze these numbers, go back and have some input, because I think it would be helpful to have input from the DRC. And let me make sure I'm understanding that is the Citizens Advisory Committee for the downtown CRA, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I think it would be helpful to have some analysis. I mean, we have bankers and we have all sorts of numbers of people on that group. So that would inform our decisions, at least mine, on this topic. And also we need to discuss with the CRA. So in order for that to happen, how long would that take?
We've continued to work on this week, even after the DRC meeting. We were working on it today. And we would be ready to go back to the DRC in early March. I think their meeting is on the 6th. So that's not a problem for us. We do want to speak some more with the applicant. Right now, we're kind of sort of at an impasse, but we want to look for a counter proposal. And if we can work it out, then we could have it back to the DRC the very next meeting.
All right, my other question was, are these 281 parking spaces with parking on the first floor as opposed to retail?
Yes, they're in their proposal, and this is a key issue because the CRA financing is one part of this issue. Another part is the question about retail. Their position is that the retail should not be required. They did not include it in their pro forma. And so essentially, because it's required by the code, any pro forma that we analyze should include the cost of retail. We estimated it would be between $850,000 to $1 million to include retail as shown in the UPUD. So that is going to be an issue that needs to be worked out before they can proceed with the UPUD. And that's something they would have to work out. And that's something that will come back to this commission for a determination.
Well, I'm willing to make a motion that we give them an extra, I guess we've given them 60 to 90 days. Don't know if we can go all the way to July, but 60 to 90 days and see what's viable here. I mean, I'm not interested in our CRA losing money, obviously. So that is my motion. Don't know how you all feel about that.
See, if you made a motion, but let me make some comments before there is a response to that motion, if you don't mind. Okay. I was here in 2006, along with Commissioner Gillum and others, when we first got the design. And I've just got to be very, very upfront with Mr. McKibben and others. the design you have right now is nothing like what we saw back then, that I really, really like. And so that's troubling to me that, this is a hotel, and quite honestly, all this does, and I got to be all this does is put more bedrooms in the city of Tallahassee. We got a ton of them. We probably got more bedrooms, or as I facetiously said, we got as many bedrooms in Orlando right now, and we're getting close. And we all realize that, I don't know if you know this, but the intersection of Interstate 10 and Monroe Street has more bedrooms on Interstate 10 than any other intersection on Interstate 10, from Los Angeles to Jacksonville. Okay, we have that. I don't mind a hotel so much, but I want a hotel that makes a statement for this corner, because this corner is a signature corner for our city. It really is. It really says something to us, and I've said that over and over again. When I first talked to you all, I said this is a signature corner. I want to see something happen. I want to see something sexy. I want to see something that really makes me brag about the city of Tallahassee. That's what I want to see. And the initial rendering did that to me. It could have been improved, but it did it for me to see it. And that's what I want to see for this corner. The TIF issue really bothers me, because if we start going down that road where we give all of the TIF back, we don't have any more money for other developments that might be in the down. We don't have any of that money, at least, for developments that's down in the downtown area. And then with the next developer who comes along, I want all the TIF. And that's a slippery slope that I'm not very comfortable with, Henry. I'm not very comfortable with that at all. Okay, and as Commissioner Gillum indicated, the future development. Well, we haven't had anybody come and offer any other potential for this, because it has been with you guys for the last 10 years or so. And so nobody is going to go there. I mean, they're just not going to, if they're not inclined to do it. Now, having said all that, you understand where I am. If we made a commitment to take this to let you get to the CRA, I'll keep that commitment and let it get to the CRA, or let the DRC take a look at this. I'm really troubled that the DRC, in looking at this, did not have an opportunity to address the issue of the TIF. And so their recommendation, their unanimous recommendation, may not be so unanimous once they hear what has been proposed with the TIF. I'm willing to allow the DRC to look at this and see and make a recommendation to them. This has to come back to us, because I am told we made a commitment to let it get to the CRA. And if that's the case, I will keep that commitment. But I got to tell you, I'm not, and the staff time that has been spent on this, significant staff time spent on this. And, so anyway, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Let's clarify whether the motion is for 60 or 90 days, Mayor, because...
Yeah, I'll let Commissioner Miller.
Well, that was what I was hoping to get some feedback on, because the CRA really has to be the group that addresses the TIF issues. And what we're looking at here is an option that ends next year, a benchmark. We're looking at changing a benchmark. We're not extending the option. We're changing the benchmark date. The question is, how long? And my suggestion was 60 to 90 days, and then I threw the ball back to you to fill in the blanks.
He's throwing the ball back.
And it may be that if we don't have a second, it's a moot point. So, but that's my view.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Commissioner. I'm sorry. He won't.
No, I'm finished.
Oh, okay. The benchmarks were set in place as an indicator of the seriousness and viability of the plan that was presented in 2006. And so even our reliance on that as the indicator, the situations surrounding that date have changed. So it's, it's not like we're evaluating the same set of product that we looked at initially, and then the terms that were set in place at that time. There has been movement, there has been change, and in my view, pretty significant change from when these markers were initially set in place. My question is a parliamentary one, which is if unfortunately there are only 4 of us and not 5, and so if there is not agreement amongst 3 of us, I assume this defaults back to, I guess, the timeline of February 28th stays in place, and the CRA then considers this on February 26th.
We don't know. We'll ask our parliamentary individual who is.
So you understand what's going on here on the motion. The developer has asked to extend the benchmark that now hits on February 28th for essentially 5 months to the end of July, okay? The motion that was made, Commissioner Miller, you're going to have to either say 60 or 90 days because otherwise it's not a valid motion because it's
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. I'll say 90 days, and that'll prevent us having this very same conversation in another 30 to 40 days where we're being asked to extend because they don't have enough time. So for the sake of discussion, I'll make that motion for 90 days.
Okay, so if the motion is second and voted on, a 2-2 vote does not pass the motion. It would take 3 votes to pass the motion and extend the milestone. If the milestone is not extended, Commissioner Gillum, on March the 1st, if the milestone is not met, which is what is expected to happen, it's certainly by the CRA and the staff, then the option agreement still is in effect. The city has the option at that point in time, with the milestone not having been met, to terminate the entire option agreement. But that also, that is not self-executing.
Got it.
So if you vote not to extend, or if the vote results in no extension, then to move this thing to some conclusion, it would be appropriate at that point to instruct staff as soon as a milestone is not met to terminate the city's rights under the option to terminate the whole option agreement, which otherwise would just float on out till April of 2015.
So in other words, we have to reach agreement one way or another. Doing nothing is not an option.
Well, it would be totally inappropriate to not extend the milestones, the February 28th come and the milestones not be met and you not terminate the agreement, but you need to make a specific decision and vote on that.
Okay.
Commissioner Ziffer,
Well,
you look puzzled.
If I understand correctly, if we don't extend and we don't vote to have staff as of the 28th, or I should say March 1st, terminate the agreement, we're just going to be sitting here for 15 months with really sitting here with nothing to do.
Yeah.
And we got to wait then until the 15 months are up to really market. So if we don't do the extension, we really need to vote to terminate.
Totally correct.
Well, that sounds efficient, but we aren't going to be, it doesn't mean that we'll be, and this doesn't have anything to do with these folks, but it seems to me that we can terminate that, as soon as the milestone's not met, we can terminate the agreement at any time. I mean, we can terminate in March, we can terminate in April, we can terminate any time, we can wait 6 or 8 months, but we're not sitting here by default till the 15th, till 2015, correct?
The option will continue until April of 2015, even if the milestones are not met unless there's an affirmative vote by a majority to go ahead and terminate the option.
But that would hold us up from starting to market the property.
Yes.
It certainly would, and I know staff certainly would advise you not to do that.
Right, and with other things that are happening potentially on West Tennessee Street, with the shelter moving, I think there's probably a real good market for the property we have on West Tennessee Street because of these other changes we're making. So I would suggest I'd hate to sit on this thing, but.
No, you're welcome to make a motion. I don't have a second at this point.
Well, she's got a motion on
We
the,
can't
a
just
motion,
here
but
with
there
no
has not.
vote on anything though, so.
Commissioner Miller's made a motion, and the motion has not been second. The only way that it can be second at this point appears that one of you all do it or I do it.
Yes, sir.
And the only way I can do is to pass the gavel to you.
Yes, sir.
The last time I did that, it was not a good result.
You didn't get it back?
I gave it back. I don't remember that.
You remember that?
No, I don't.
I do remember that. I'll pass the gavel and second the motion so we can have a vote.
Okay. So,
Extension 90 days.
I'll second the motion.
I'd call the question.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
Fails.
Motion
Motion
fails.
fails.
Tie vote.
Tie vote.
So the motion fails. The motion to extend the milestone fails. Let the record reveal that. Now, the other recommendation that's presented to you by staff was whether or not to give the manager authority to terminate the option once the milestone is not met. The earliest that could be done would be March 1st.
I move that.
Second.
Properly moved and second. All in, oh, I got it back. You gave it back to me?
I did, yes, sir.
Formally give it back.
I did.
Okay. We have a motion to give the authority to the city manager to terminate the agreement once the milestones have not been met.
Once
If it is not.
If they are not met, if the milestones aren't met by the appropriate date. Do we understand the motion?
Question, is our CRA meeting before the 28th?
It is.
The 26th.
Okay, thank you.
CRA meeting is just before the termination
Yeah,
date.
but
27th.
at least
27th.
it isn't
I'm
after.
sorry, the day before.
We got to move on. All in favor of the motion to give the manager the authority to terminate if in fact the options are not met, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Mr. Please. Please, we have decorum in here. We appreciate all of that. We have. Next item.
Next item is target issue updates, and we have two tonight. One is long-range planning by Commissioner Miller, and the second is financial viability by Commissioner Maddox. He's coming back.
He's back.
Are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay. I don't know, is he?
Go ahead, you go.
Thank you. Well, Commissioners, we met in Long Range Planning Target Issue Committee on January 22nd, and we had all sorts of exciting adventures, as you all know that we always do on Long Range Planning. We had a lot of speakers because we had some heavy items, including the noise ordinance, on our agenda. We also discussed the allowance of golf carts on City Street, and the committee action was to direct the staff to amend the code to allow the TMH to operate golf carts on certain city streets in the vicinity of the hospital. And I believe we've already brought that to the commission, have we not?
Not yet.
Not that I know.
No, we have not brought that to commission. I know we're in the process of changing the ordinance to provide for that, but it
Okay.
has not been brought.
All right, thank you. This item number 3, essentially, first item was public participation, was an update on the draft proposed noise ordinance. The most important thing that happened at the meeting was that our new police chief, Michael DeLeo, came and gave us some insight into what would be required if we were to pass a noise ordinance at this point, or when we pass the noise ordinance, what the expectation of the citizens is going to be, which is quick response, and that he basically, having just arrived, has a great deal on his plate in rebuilding his organization, replacing folks that are retiring, settle issues that are at the police, at the TPD. And so he basically advised us to not put an ordinance in place right away. So listening to him and considering, because he basically said that he did not have the ability to enforce it at this point. Based on that discussion, we decided to give this direction, establish a stakeholder group which would examine the issues and reach consensus on standards that would be presented to the commission, to conduct sound tests at existing establishments to determine what the current noise levels are and what the appropriate levels for the ordinance should be for Tallahassee, to examine the proposed special entertainment areas in regards to size and address, and then just have a stakeholder discussion on that. Consider the standards for the city manager, establishing standards for the city manager to waive or vary noise limits, because at this point we didn't have any discussion of that. In addition, the committee action was to move forward to establish a city policy for standards at the Capital City Cascades Park Amphitheater, separate and apart from the noise ordinance. That was Commissioner Maddox's suggestion. That was a good suggestion. And so we're going to bring something forward to you in the near future regarding just the amphitheater. And finally, we asked that our TPD quantify the resources necessary to enforce a noise ordinance and how that would look when it is put into place. So all of this, I would have to say that I really appreciate the addition of Chief DeLeo's comments and his involvement. I think that we're going to end up in a better situation, much better situation with him in the conversation. And then finally, we had a brief introduction to the proposed international airport concept, and that was just for information only, and we'll be hearing more about that at this coming, the Long-Range Planning Target Issue Committee meeting that's coming up. And finally, we had a talk about the multimodal transportation district, because several issues related to the size of the district, the flexibility in landscaping, the infrastructure in concert with the MMTD, and whether we should look at projects individually because of our topography and things like that. And we also want to resolve issues related to the canopy roads. So that is a work in progress. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Financial viability.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. A couple items. The first one is the audit of acquisition of commercial insurance coverage. Commissioner Gillum and I sit on financial viability. As you remember, I brought to the commission, when our item was up for renewing our insurance, I voiced my displeasure at not having what I thought was a competitive RFP process over a long period of years, and a suspicion that we were paying much more than we should pay. And as a result of our action on the commission, we had an audit done by Mr. Fletcher, our independent auditor, and the results of that are, first, that our incumbent insurance carrier has had the insurance business for, in one case, at least 33 years that we can document. It perhaps goes beyond that, but at least 33 years. Over the past 10 years, they have been 8 out of 9 of the coverages that we've gone out to an RFP for. In the past 10 years, they have been the sole RFP respondent, except for when there are specialized lines of insurance. So there's occasionally 2, but more than often 1. We paid a total premiums of $35.6 million during that period of time. The broker's fees during those 10 years were 9.1% during those 10 years. We surveyed, the auditor surveyed 10 like communities, including Leon County and Leon County schools. and found that they select their broker separately than in combining it with the lines of insurance, which results in a higher premium, and that 9 out of 10 do it the broker of record method, and that the average fees that those 10 cities have paid over the same period of time was 5.11%. The auditor found that the city of Tallahassee would have saved $1.5 million over a 10-year period had we had a competitive process, and that we had a violation of intent of the procurement regulations. So that's the answer on the audit. The Treasurer Clerk's Office has an implementation plan to fix this moving forward, and you can find that in the audits. The audit report is number 1404. I'm sure you've all been distributed that, so we'll be watchful of that coming forward with the implementation plan. Also, we've requested through the committee a list of all of our long-range contracts. We've gotten that information back, the initial information from the Treasurer Clerk, and when they've gone out to RFP and how many respondents have been, and what the average we're paying in comparison to other communities, so we can make sure that this doesn't happen again. The second item is the pay-as-you-go electric program. This is just in the beginning of this. I know that Commissioner Gillum's excited about this as well. Staff's currently working on testing a new service that allows customers, especially college students, the ability to pay for energy as it's used, so it eliminates surprises at the end of the month and can control their costs. It's still in the very beginning stages of looking into the program, so an update's going to come back to the Financial Viability Target Issue Committee at the March meeting, and then hopefully we'll be able to bring the item to the full commission.
Good.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, I think the pay-as-you-go, or I guess it's people actually prepaid electric service is what it amounts to. And that has a lot of potential to help a lot of students, a lot of households, quite frankly, if they can prepay and understand. But I hope you're looking at, as you do that, whether or not we'll be able to, if they prepay it, we can give them some sort of discount if they prepay. Just look at it, doing it that way.
Things we're looking at, yes.
Yeah, and if they go over a certain amount, if they say they want 100 kilowatt hours, that's great at a certain discount, but if they go over, it's going to cost them. But anyway, I like that program. I think it's a good one. Next item.
Next item is unagended speakers.
And?
We have 3, Mayor. The first unagended speaker tonight is Harry Brown. He'll be followed by Erwin Jackson. And as in the earlier portion of our meeting, speakers will have 3 minutes with the light to the left of their microphone.
Somebody different.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Harry Brown. I reside at 5431 Crump Road in Tallahassee. I come to you in humility and brotherly love. I would like to express my sincere concern for establishing an ethics commission. When an ethics commission is established, this will keep the city in line with the consent decree that was levied against it in 1995 that was supposed to last on, that was levied against it in 1975 and was supposed to last until 1995. The Justice Department found the city in gross violation of the civil rights of blacks and other minorities. An ethics commission will keep us in line with Dr. King's dream that one day his posterity, little black boys and little black girls, will be able to join little white boys and little white girls and walk together as sisters and brothers. Under the city's past and current commission, our city manager's watch, the dream is dying, if not dead. In the mid-'80s, there were 15 black directors. Today, there are 2. And I saw tonight there's one added at the airport, makes it 3. And they are the manager's friends. The commission has sat idly by and watched this happen. The Ethics Commission could serve as a watchdog for the civil rights of all employees. It could ensure that city funds are spent for meaningful and purposeful projects. One mayor spent $17,000 to renovate his office for his own selfish reasons, while other commissioners did not agree, while the renovated office was used for all the wrong things. An ethics commission would prevent employees from being fired without cause and not have lies fabricated against them to justify a firing, and would prevent, listen at me please, would prevent Tom Coe from having a black employee marched out of City Hall without cause with a gun at his back. An ethics commission would ensure commissioners do not violate the city charter. An ethics commission would prevent the city commission from getting involved in employee matters. It would prevent the mayor, manager, and commissioners from lining their pockets from their constituents. The Ethics Commission would not allow guns on the dais, as was allowed with Scott Maddox. An Ethics Commission would prevent the mayor, manager from taking a $31,000 severance pay from a black employee while whites and others were paid.
Excuse me, your time has expired.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
But listen to what Bette Midler tells us.
Next speaker will be Erwin Jackson.
Us. That means you and all of us.
And Erwin Jackson will be followed by Curtis Baines.
There you get up. I got to go to bed.
Erwin Jackson, 1341 Jackson Bluff. My comments are based on 3 newspaper articles. I'll share those with the commissioners, make them part of the public record. So when Scott says, oh, I'm just making this up, you'll have the documentation. In a couple of weeks, this commission will have an opportunity to vote for an outside ethics officer. John Marks has stated he would not support an ethics ordinance. I understand his reasoning, given his difficulty in following and acting ethically in a public office. Scott Maddox has indicated he might support an ethics policy, but only if he and all current commissioners were exempt from the policy. On December 11th, 2013, I asked Scott to explain why he can take money from a red light camera business and then say he's really representing the public. I asked Scott specifically if he was the attorney for Redflex, a red light camera business. Convicted felon and Redflex executive Jay Morris stated in a newspaper article that I'll provide you that yes, Scott Maddox was their attorney and described his unsavory relationship. Scott, again, denied the accuracy of my statements in these articles. The city concluded a 3-year study of red light cameras and concluded that this program removed $6.3 million from our local economy and caused an increase in crashes at intersections. This program is clearly not in the best interest of the public. Another former Redflex official, Aaron Rosenberg, just recently confirming with law enforcement that, quote, Redflex management is responsible for bribing local officials in 10 states, including Florida. Bribes include lavish gifts, meals, and $5,000 apiece in cash payments to elected officials, according to this newspaper report. Executive Vice President Rosenberg provided documentation of $3,235 spent on dinner at Morton's Steakhouse during the Florida League of City meetings. The purpose of this was to encourage city commissioners to implement the red light programs. Most concerning is an email he provided which states, and I quote, the presence of their attorney, Scott Maddox, interjected a further and higher degree of credibility towards Redflex traffic systems, a company that was trying to bribe leaders of several commissions throughout this community. I guess the only thing you can conclude is if you're in a process of trying to bribe elected officials, it's good to have Scott around. Now I think our community knows why John Marks and Scott Maddox will oppose an outside ethics officer. I think we also know why the city of Tallahassee is implemented a red light program. Finally, all I want to say is Redflex, McKibben Hotel Group, Allied Veterans of the World, and the City TAP Program, and Sweetheart Deals are the accomplishments of Scott Maddox. Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Next speaker is Curtis Baines.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. Curtis Baines, 1323 East Tennessee Street. I did want to follow up on a report that I'd read earlier about this TAP contract that was awarded to the higher bid or the high bidder. I realize that you have delegated to the city manager the authority to enter into agreements below a specified threshold. However, there is still a public policy question in here for you, and I think you should be following up on, and that is whether or not the city got a fair exchange on this transaction. When people submit bids, you don't expect them all to be the same, and there is no requirement that you accept the lower bid. The requirement is that you ensure that you're getting a fair exchange on the transaction. You know, where that exchange changes from 10 or 20% difference, I don't know, but 4 times the cost that it would have been is a question I think that you should ask, and I would certainly recommend that you do that. I don't think you would be asking tonight, or maybe you will, I don't know, but I would certainly recommend that you follow up on it. I don't know whether or not the low bidder was just too inferior or the higher bidder was just that far superior, or whether, in fact, we got a fair exchange in this transaction. And well, even though this is a delegated transaction, I think implicit in that delegation is the requirement that your administrators ensure that the city is getting a fair exchange. So I would recommend that you look into this in due course. Thank you very much.
That's the last speaker.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, before we go to sharing, I just briefly, again, in case anyone's watching on television, Mr. Jackson states things that he knows are not true, which, by the way, is actionable when you know that what you say isn't true. First of all, he said that I'd only support the ethics policy if it exempt all the current city commissioners. That's not the case, but he just makes it up and says it. Also, he's pulled any and all clients that I've had in my law firm and attempt to make them conflicts with me being a city commissioner now. And he brings things up that have happened, that representation was, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I was not in any public office. And then tries to make it sound like this client ended up at the city of Tallahassee. He knows that's not true. But to say that someone gives bribes, so tonight he has accused me, by the way, of running a criminal empire. Tonight he says that I've been in charge of bribing local elected officials, and if you want to bribe officials, involve me. Well, I invite Mr. Jackson to bring that to the state attorney, to bring that to the FBI, to bring that to Leon County Sheriff's Office, and if I have broken the law in any way, shape, or form, I'm sure that they would be asking me questions. None of that has occurred, and he knows it hasn't occurred because he makes things up at every meeting. And you'll continue to find clients that I've represented over the years. And by the way, I'm an attorney. I also do criminal law. So I have represented people who have been accused of crimes. So does that make me a criminal? I don't think so. I think they have a constitutional right for representation. So I just wanted to add that in for the record. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're quite welcome, Commissioner. And
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to comment too.
sure.
Well, what a great opportunity to showcase the accomplishments of the TAP campaign, which was started in 2003 at the Ochlockonee Soil and Water Conservation District. It was transferred to the city in somewhere around 2006. The team I saw a figure about how much was, quote, spent on it, and literally half of that was pro bono. Half of that was in-kind value. This is probably one of the best examples of a public-private partnership that has ever been conceived, and I'll give the credit to that to Ms. Kathy Archibald. She put the team together, she presented it to DEP, they bought it, and when it was moved to the city actually, based on the history, actually demanded that in order to keep the grant, that the city had to keep the existing vendors, one of which was Mr. Jordan. Mr. Jordan has won 2 Emmys producing ads for TAP. The program created it created behavioral changes that were in the double digits. In the case of the famous pet poop ad, 30% changes of behavior, to the point where the decrease in the nutrient load actually was calculated to have saved the city $2 million. So I think maybe some of that might have played into the city manager's decision when she evaluated the folks who brought the RFPs forward. In fact, I believe this is the first year that anybody else has even bid on the project. So I just wanted to make that clear. This is a project that has received not only statewide recognition, but has also received national recognition as an example that others should follow.
Commissioner Maddox, I just want to say something. I obviously feel your frustration in having to sit up here and listen to an individual who obviously tells lies and says things about you and everything. I want to let you know I really resent that happening to you under these circumstances. But, you know, as somebody said, it's part of the game. That's part of the circumstances. I don't believe that. I really honestly don't. And we have to listen to this diatribe on a weekly basis, and it is hurtful not only to you personally, and it has been to me, but it's hurtful to my family, and it's hurtful to those individuals out there to hear the kind of statements, comments, misrepresentations being made by Mr. Jackson. So,
thank you, sir.
Okay. Yes.
Just a couple of things, Mr. Mayor. The first thing is...
Spay and neuter.
Nope, March 14th. Opening at Cascades Park, and I was reminded when we were sitting here talking about the cultural plan, art, culture, and heritage. And that park, that's what it is. It's going to have performing arts, it'll have visual arts. It is about culture, and from a heritage standpoint, where Smoky Hollow is, it's where the Capitol was founded. That park is one of the strongest reasons we have for supporting art, culture, and history. So I want to thank this commission for expressing that support earlier. Spay and neuter. There you go. Do it. It's important. Allison Ferris, one of our folks from our communications department, will be competing in the Oxygen Ball on Saturday. We wish her the best of luck. She's going to do great. Yeah. And finally, if we had our city commission meetings on Saturday instead of Wednesday, we would have been singing happy birthday to our city manager. So she had a birthday this last Saturday, so happy birthday to you,
yes,
Madam City Manager.
Thank you.
And on that note, since you're having a birthday, we got a few refreshments.
I've got a sharing.
Want to share something? Go right ahead.
Two things. One, I've had baseball complaints lately on two items. One, that a younger child wished to play up and that was bigger and stronger than the other kids his age and wanted to play in the older league and was told that he could not do that based on rules. I know there's probably a good reason for that, but I think we need to look at that policy. And the second one was the not allowing kids to go on the same team and breaking them up. And the complaint I got was you should either draft them all or allow them to form teams and not allow them to do partial teams and not the other. So what I would like to ask is that our Parks Advisory Committee look at those two issues on the baseball issues and give them some scrutiny and bring that back in one form or another to let us know what they come up with. And the second one is good news. It's a bit frivolous, but Commissioner Gillum and Assistant City Manager Acting at the time, Dee Crumpler, competed with, I guess, Commissioner Dozier and County Administrator Vince Long in a bartending contest for a cause. And I believe your cause was elder care. And
Second Harvest.
Second Harvest, and their cause was elder care. And you tally up the tips at the end of the night and see who won. And unfortunately, by some streak of luck, the county was able to prevail.
Kristen wrote a big personal $500. Now go. She's good.
So, understanding
But a
that.
family member did.
But
I'm
a family
sure.
member. But anyway.
Understanding that we had to recapture our honor, Commissioner Maddox, my first cousin, Commissioner Maddox, on the county, again with Vince Long, competed against myself and Rick Fernandez in the epic Maddox v. Maddox battle. And not only did we prevail, but we beat them 2-1,
Yay.
bringing back the glory to the city of Tallahassee. I just want to report on that.
So,
Don't you want to say where the money went?
Where did money
Oh,
go?
right. Ours went to the animal shelter. So the Animal Shelter Foundation and helping the animal shelter to spay and neuter your pets. So we were excited about that. Theirs was the Pace Center for Girls. So we both raised a lot of money, but we ended up 2-1.
but since you have said that, at the beginning of April, County Commissioner Brian Deloge and I will be competing on the same level, so I expect hopefully the same level of support from city so that we can show the county that, well, they should go back to the county.
Well, on just this note, a little bit serious, this is Black History Month, and I would hope that all of us take an opportunity to recognize those individuals in our community who have served us and made a difference in this community. We have the Heritage Walk on Lafayette. Is that Lafayette? The Heritage Walk on Jefferson here.
Jefferson.
And I hope you take an opportunity to see it because it is a meaningful piece of our history. In addition to that, on a point of personal privilege, I do have a Facebook page, and if you go on my Facebook page, you'll see that my family has a very long history of education, and my great-grandfather, Oliver Lewis Coleman, was the founder of a school for colored kids in 1887, which eventually evolved into a four-year college in Gibson, Louisiana. The college is no longer, it was the only HBCU to survive in that area of northern Louisiana until 1937. And this past weekend, I traveled to Gibson, Louisiana, where they put a marker down recognizing my great-grandfather, Oliver Lewis Coleman. And it was really special to me that that he has been recognized. He was a contemporary of Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, and all of those during that period of time. But unfortunately, he didn't survive. He was killed in 1927 in an automobile accident. But anyway, I just want to let you all know that. And
Very nice.
and he's really means something to me and my family. My mother, by the way, who's 93 years old, grew up on the campus. It is no longer there. Right now, there's a high school there, and it's Gibbsland Coleman High School, and that's where the marker is located now. So
Nice.
Very nice.
anyway,
Congratulations.
thank you very much. And with that, we stand adjourned.
Cake.
Application deadline. Applications are accepted on a continuous basis. Minimum training and experience. Possession of a high school diploma or an equivalent recognized certificate